All right. All right, here you go. All right, all you freedom-loving boys and girls, welcome to Mission Critical Podcast. If you are watching or if you listen to this podcast later on Spotify, no matter where you hear this information or join in this conversation, you are the resistance. And as always,
Right.
I'm one of your hosts, Mark. I can't use David's title, though, DB, Redbeard. So I got to come up with a title, but I'm just Mark, I guess, just a dude. And then I always screw that up. Over there,
Redbeard.
All right, we got just a couple little fun things to do, and then we're going to do a mad minute, and then we're going to kind of jump into the meat, so to speak, of this tonight's podcast, which is really just got a note from Rumble. That's kind of weird. We're having it's possible the stream was ended or deleted in this cannot.
Uh-oh.
All right, I have no idea what that is. Hey, why don't you take over for a second there, Redbeard? I'm going to bring Blackbeard to the stage. And I'm going to try to figure out what's going on this stream here.
So tonight it's going to be a pretty good night. We're going to go over topics that we had discussed originally on Tuesday. We have the fabulous Blackbeard joining us this evening. We may have a few other people trickle in as time goes on. Blackbeard, do you want to say a few words before we start ramping up here?
Thank you for having me. If you look at my subtitle under my name, it says Geopolitical Ignoramus. So you've been warned.
Hey, I'm trying to do some work back here. Don't make me laugh.
So don't be too harsh with your judgments when you're like, oh, he doesn't know about that. Like, for example, I would not call myself an expert on the Cold War. And I think that trying to understand what's happening geopolitically in that section of the world right now it's kind of a prerequisite to have a somewhat of a catalog of an understanding of that whole situation. I'm not making excuses. It happens to be that I was a small child while that was happening. So
that's valid. Yeah. No, I think either way, we're going to have some good insights from a lot of different perspectives, whether it's the border, Iran, in some of the areas over there, or Ukraine, because I think there's a lot of very tense developing situations, and you're going to start to see a lot of people's emotions and opinions really come up to the forefront the more this stuff, kind of stews and boils to the surface. So, some events, perhaps a little bit more immediate than others. So,
hey, just a quick update. Oh, I thought I fixed it, and then it just gave me the same error again. So, all right. You guys, here, let me just stop for a second. I'll come back to this in a moment and try to figure out why. So right now, it booted us off of Rumble for some reason. You got to get a streaming code. I don't know. So anyway, hey, so just real quickly for everybody watching, I'm going to do a quick little internet forensics and figure out how to get us back over on Rumble. I have no idea what happened, but just to maybe kind of get it going, do you guys, I'm going to throw in my 2 cents for a quick, the mad minute, and then we'll jump into the gist of it. My mad minute is simply, and I know a lot of other people see it. I'm just really tired also of people who aren't willing to get into the fight, who always just complain. Well, what are you going to do? When are we going to do this? And dude, we're doing something right now. What are you doing? We're talking about issues. We're trying to share. We're trying to bring on people with diverse backgrounds, some of whom have a lot of experience in maybe some of these subject areas. But then you just still get people bitching. And it ain't just us. I'm actually talking about people with real, much larger followings, content creators. And just to hear and see all the negative commentary from people who are supposedly on the same side. Dude, get off your ass and vote. Do something. Vote. See some of our previous podcasts. So that's my mad minute. And Redbeard, I know that kind of feeds to you a little bit. Hey, can you bring yourself up full screen and Blackbeard full screen? Do you have that capability on your end?
Let me give her a shot here.
Because if you do, then I'm going to go behind scenes and try to figure out this Rumble thing real quickly.
So I can do that.
If you can
Otherwise, I can do.
Here. No, that's fine. I'll remove myself from the screen for a couple minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So Blackbeard, we can do our mad minutes, and then if we want to take a minute or two to kind of elaborate on a response to each other, we can do that. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to shoot first?
You shoot first. There was an idea wanted to talk about, and I need to
Yep.
capture it again.
Yeah, for sure. So my only thing pertaining to the Mad Minute is I did take time to, and I'm actually going to watch the rest of it here, but I took time to get through the bulk of the infamous, at this point, Tucker Carlson, Vladimir Putin interview. It's very interesting. You have to detach yourself from your bias, and you have to detach yourself from your feelings and your emotions about it, and you have to go in with an objective point of view and kind of allow yourself to, a lot of people listen to respond, but you have to actually just listen to understand with this, because he explains a lot of different things, and whether you like the guy, whether you don't like the guy, it still merits allowing an opportunity for him to further elaborate on how he feels and how he sees the pulse of his country. I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. But what I'm saying is he should have at least an opportunity to be able to, say his piece. And Tucker Carlson certainly afforded him the opportunity to do that. So that's just my Mad Minute. It's nothing too crazy. But if you do have the opportunity to check out the interview, please do. Just take the opportunity. I know it's 2 hours, but just take the time, go watch the interview, and at least see what's said. So
I think for my minute, what I'd like to cover is what we see is the decline of the West, and it ties
yeah.
into what you were talking about with that interview,
Mhm.
because and the thing of it is there are certain elements of truth to what he's saying in terms of the Chinese system, but something to understand as well is that they're notorious for producing less than accurate figures, and they have a massive shadow banking system. They built cities that have gone
Mhm.
nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's not that our statistics are exactly above board, and that's the other thing I would say about that interview, is that
Yeah.
you have to remember that this man is a career politician, and that's why a
Mhm.
lot of this very straightforward answer or questions that were asked of him were
Yeah.
answered in a very non-straightforward way. There was
Yeah.
redirection, obfuscation, and all politicians do that, and you must do it. And I think part of
Yeah.
the reason that you have to do that is because the more direct and more specific you are, the more you isolate potential, like, an audience.
Right.
When you're like, oh, that's their opinion, that's where they land
Mhm.
on that. Well, that's not me. Well, I'm out. And so that's why politicians tend to be very, like, almost like mirrors. They answer the
Right.
questions that they wish that they were asked rather than the questions they were actually asked. And so I've exceeded a minute, but that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good assessment of that, and I think that's also where people have to kind of detach themselves from their bias to really sit down and and hear those points, because clearly you can take the man out of the KGB, but you can't take the KGB out of the man. And I'm not going to say whether that's a fault or a positive or whatever, but clearly, like, he knows how to articulate that his language and the way that he says things. But and I'm sure that this particular subject will eventually come up later in the podcast, but I felt that it was pertinent considering what we're talking to, as far as different subjects tonight. And I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch our episode from Tuesday, but we felt that concerning some of the most prominent and pertinent things, being Ukraine, being Iran in the Middle East right now, because that's becoming a hotbed of activity, in addition to the border, which, I mean, when you look at the border and how that whole situation is evolving down south, and not just particularly down south, but also the potentiality of being up north, by the northern border, in places like Minnesota and New York and so many other states. I mean, there are legitimate concerns as it pertains to potential saboteurs or potential enemies of our country, however you want to and that's the other thing too, is like, however that classification is handed down, because I feel like anytime you have the state that arbitrarily labels somebody as an enemy, it could be just as easy to label somebody that's a Catholic an enemy, which the FBI tried to do anyways. So I don't want to say that it shouldn't be a term that's used, but we have to be conscientious of how we're going about utilizing that language and being honest about how we use that language. And I'm not quite sure where Mark wants to start. I know that I've kind of monopolized a little bit of the Ukraine segment and things of that nature. So I don't know, and I'm going to have a little bit of time here tonight, so I'm not sure if he wants to start on that end of the spectrum right away to try and get that point in, but or if he wants to start from the very beginning. But what are your, I guess, just to kind of get your opinions on before we really delve into it. I mean, what do you think? Where do you think we are? I guess not only as a country, but just as the world in general right now. I mean, we're facing a lot of different issues. Yeah, Mark.
Hey, sorry guys, and everybody. Some weird technical issue. We've done this. This is our third live stream, Redbeard. I never had to do what I just did. Yeah, I never had to do what I just had to do over on Rumble. Right now, it looks like we're up. If one of you don't mind, now let's just tag team. Somebody go over to Rumble and just see if you can find us live. Right now, it says we're live, but that was weird. We've never had to do it that way, so I don't know what really happened. So apologies, everybody. We'll get into the meat of it. And if we're not on Rumble, we're not on Rumble tonight. So what? But kind of jumping into it. And as you're doing that, Jeremy, you start talking. I could hear you guys talking. You're talking about the recent interview, and I actually listened to it on X today when I had to cut a bunch of material, so I'm just measuring stuff out. Sat and listened to that interview, and I just, maybe we'll just start off on the Russia-Ukraine kind of aspect of things.
Sure.
What was really nice, and this is why we really have to hold our ground as Americans, all of this tripe about, Tucker Carlson, that's not what journalists, and he's getting played like whatever. I'm like, well, what about the people who went and interviewed Fidel Castro or interviewed Osama bin Laden? Journalists have been interviewing bad guys for a very long time. If you think Vladimir Putin's a bad guy, well, then at the worst, it's just another journalist interviewing another bad guy. I remember when I think it was CBS, went and interviewed bin Laden. I mean, think about that. You're just like, man, but you needed to hear and see that interview so you can better understand. Again, if you just want to take one side of the coin, so you can better understand your enemy. And, it also shows you, I thought that interview, it's worth watching. If for nothing else, to be able to see Vladimir Putin, just like you can see me, you can see Redbeard, you can see Blackbeard, you can see how his beard is getting really sexy. We had a nice little fun conversation before we hit record on that, but I'm going to send him an eye patch. So just stay tuned. But you can see the language of his body, and you get to see how somebody from another culture responds and reacts to a question. There were times in which it may have appeared as though he was stalling, but from his cultural psyche, it was necessary to set the stage to get to the point. You're asking me a question that's in the middle of the book. I would be a fool to not talk about the other preceding chapters, because there was a lot of information that led us to this point right here. I thought that was very interesting to see him as a man do that. You can see the old KGB and the politician in him when he deflected Tucker's Mr. Carlson's comment at the very end, like, hey, give us the journalist, be a great, you're talking about rapprochement, detente, a great gesture, on you, to be a good man, that you're claiming is to give us his freedom. It's kind of a sucker play, but you got to try it. So I got to, hats off to Tucker for having a go of it. Now, whether he just did it on his own or, but you could see you can see Putin's body language. You can hear his response. You can hear the tone of his voice. It helps you better understand who it is sitting across from you. So for all the naysayers and the I'm just going to say it, all the idiots out there who want to, why are we suddenly wanting to squash freedom of the press and actual journalism.
It's
and
weird.
everybody watch and listen, and here we all know. I mean, do I need to spell it out why they want to squash it? I mean, look, if nothing, here's my last comment. Putin, you got to give him props. He schooled the West on the whole history of the region and the history of the history of events that led us to where we are right now.
100%.
And that's legitimate history. Yes, he's, the bad guy. He's the opposing force. But now to something that I've said for the very longest time, once that wall came down, I was kind of quoting Thucydides. We needed to make him, take your enemy and make him as like he's your best friend, right? Because if somebody's going to be, you want to keep them close so you can keep an eye on them, right? And help control and shift and change their future. And look, Putin even said that. He's like, look, we thought it was going to be this, and then you guys started doing the double-barreled, as Bongino says, the double-barreled,
right.
Yeah. And that's, and you're kind of like, okay, so the whole history of events that led up to where we are now, he did a more historical dive, but if you just go back into the 1990s and, up to this date, and then the things that happened after Crimea on how, what was trying to go forward, you just kind of got to turn around and say, okay, are we all that innocent here? If we really did half the crap he's talking about, well, I could see how the other side would be a little pissed off. And then my final comment was to hear how somebody from another culture responds to how we speak as Americans and our jokes and our pauses and what we're trying to, elicit from somebody else. It doesn't work with somebody sometimes from another language because of the sentence structure and the cultural background. So I thought it was really good for a lot of those reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I concur, Mark. I think that, like I said earlier, when me and Blackbeard were having a conversation during the Mad Minute, like I would greatly encourage people to just, set your bias at the door and just take the time to go and watch the interview, if not for anything other than to just like gain an understanding of who this person is. Like, I get that he said things that have already been said before, but I think also when he elaborated a lot more on the history of the region, when he talked about, certain things when it comes to language, when he talks about, the potential relations that could have been had. And and the other thing I watched was his body language, the way that he, would structure himself when he went to go respond. And the other thing that I've noticed too is he didn't just respond. He took time to think about what it is he's going to say, which I feel a lot of people might, question that to some degree, but it's like, we're very used to just saying something nowadays without actually putting any thought into it. And so, he has it seems like perhaps a more measured or reasoned response, even if we think that it's right, wrong, or indifferent. So,
All right. Let me get back into quarterbacking this thing. So again, I think I got it covered on the back. I saw your message. So I think that was you, Redbeard. So I guess we're back up on Rumble. Okay. So I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. Again, sorry, everybody, whether you're watching it now or if you're watching it later. And if you're watching this on Rumble, apologize. You're going to miss just like our Mad Minute in the intro. We're kind of just now getting into the meat of it, but no idea. We've posted over there before in the live stream. It just did something really weird tonight, and I had to go in and fix the problem from a way we never have set it up before. So that's why it took me a couple minutes. I apologize. Hey, man, calm under pressure. Calm under pressure.
Oh yeah.
Redbeard or Blackbeard, do you want to come in and just weigh in? Did you get to see any of the interview or hear any of it?
I did. I watched the interview in its entirety, and I have a few thoughts about it. Some of which I already expressed, which is that I felt that he was acting as a politician, but that isn't surprising because he is a politician. Now, that said, I actually found the history kind of interesting. I think that he said something that is very true, which is that he wasn't interested in getting into a propaganda war with the United States because he would lose, and that's true. That nobody does it as well as we do it. In fact, this is really the birthplace of it through a man named Edward Bernays. He wrote a book literally entitled Propaganda, and it's been perfected for many years. The CIA also, sorry, Mark, was operative, and I believe it was the 60s through Operation Mockingbird,
Yep.
and taking over large sections of the media. And it is essentially, it's not that we're losing journalism. Journalism has been lost for an awfully long time. It did used to be better. It's degraded, but it was a state mouthpiece, or at least a mouthpiece for the very wealthy in the country, which are the ones who actually drive policy. And so when you look at a man like Putin, and I don't know a lot about him other than he has background in intelligence and he's a career politician. He seems very competent, but I will say that, um, you have to wonder. It just doesn't behoove power in any way whatsoever, to have the man that is the face of the government actually directing policy of the government, even enforcing policy. It just, what it does is it puts the true ruling power. There was a study done by I believe it was Princeton. I'll see if I can pull it up and we can link it, where they studied the actual system that we're living under de facto, and they said, well, it's actually a plutocracy or an oligarchy, and it's ruled by a few very wealthy, moneyed interests. And so, you talk about like someone, for example, like Nikki Haley, that's brought out and is very obviously a neoconservative, has the backing of Wall Street. You know, it's about, even the Supreme Court has ruled that money is a form of speech, and so it's like whoever has the gold, the golden rule, whoever has the gold makes the rules. Only in our case, we don't live on gold, we live on debt, even though central banks have been buying it up. And for me, the most important part of that entire interview was the discussion about the dollar's strategic importance in the world, for the West, and for the world, and where it's going. He's like, well, now we're doing trade in yuan, and now we're doing trade in, I can't remember, rubles, I believe it was, and talking about the BRICS and all that. And it's like, yeah, we lost Russia, but you have to remember too, the size of their economy relative to ours is, we dwarf them. We absolutely dwarf them. Now, China is massive. It is massive, and losing power, the dollar through sanctions is not a great move. I don't see it as something that was necessarily a blunder in the way that Putin does. I think it was only a blunder insofar as it was accelerationist. The dollar, as you pointed out rightly, with a $30 trillion, but what you have to understand, if people don't understand this, and I don't know, I know that I have failed communicating this message. I just simply don't know how to make it any clearer. If you pay off the national debt, say we paid it off tomorrow, it went to zero, somehow we had the funds, ignore the 20 some trillion that's missing from the Department of Defense that would actually boost that, ignore all the unfunded liabilities that would push it in probably the hundreds of trillions of dollars. Let's say we paid all of it off. Because we live in a debt-based monetary system, if you pay off the national debt, there will not be $1 in existence. You will not be able to buy a candy bar. The system is fundamentally corrupt. It's fundamentally evil. It is unjust weights and measures. And so all you're doing through the sanctions is accelerating an inevitable decline because it has no solid foundation. And they know that. The actual ruling powers in the West and in the East, oh, believe it, because it all comes down to money and religion. That's it, period. The actual ruling interests know that no world, Britain, the Great British Pound was world reserve currency. You had the Dutch had it for a time, largely because of their maritime activities, but and so the U.S. has had it, and it's long in the tooth, and the debt is unsustainable, but it is also our money, which is fake money. And they know it's coming down, and that's why they're trying to introduce the idea of the central bank digital currency. I don't think they'll do it overnight. I think it'll be a slow progression outside of catalyzing events, which they do punctuate us with. COVID is one, 9/11 is another. They do this perpetually because they can do, what is it? Somebody, I can't remember who said it, but you can do more in like 10 days of war than you can do in 10 years of peacetime or something to that effect. But we're always in perpetual war anyway. And there are many reasons for that, but I guess the point of it is that, believe it or not, they're worried about, well, are they going to use nukes? Oh, is it World War III? Well, it's like, you know what? There are financial weapons of mass destruction. And
Hmm.
honestly, I'm more worried about that, quite
Well,
frankly.
he actually kind of alluded to that, during that portion of the conversation with Bricks, a little bit about Elon Musk and
Yep.
AI and that whole future, the dollar. He was kind of alluding to that to some extent. But I realized as you were talking, Blackbeard, but I may not have completed my last thought because I got a little sidetracked. But again, the other nice thing. So you hear that those so you're echoing, in my opinion, right? You can,
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't want to speak for you, but you're echoing some of the, not the argument he was making, but some of the thought process and the background and the history of what creates him as a Russian. He's a very powerful man. Let's just not lie about that, or dismiss that. And so he, even within his society, he's probably within a different section or class within his society. So you echoed a lot of that. And the point I was trying to make, that I don't know if I really quite drove this home, because I think I was giving Mr. Carlson props for just rolling the dice and seeing if he could get that American freed. But Putin's response clearly showed another part of who you're dealing with. Dude, he is a former spy master, right? And he's a very shrewd guy. And he didn't deflect. He knew what Carlson knew, but look at how he handled that. I don't know if he had those questions ahead of time. Something tells me Tucker tried that at the very end, just as let's just see what can happen.
Yeah.
But just seeing how he deftly handled that. And I hate to say this, boys and girls, do you think Biden would have handled that question as well?
Well, you saw how he blew up the the other night when he was given very basic questions and he got mad and storms away. So it's like, but in his defense, the guy is not all there either. So
okay, damn it! I was hoping no one would do this. I got to throw this in there. I couldn't do this as my mad minute but we don't rehearse any of this stuff. We talk a lot, and maybe we just know how to feed off each other. But I don't think Jeremy knew he just threw me the softball. So hang on a second. So the special counsel just came out and said, we found President Biden guilty of these crimes, right? He has violated, he's committed crimes, right? He improperly stored classified information that he was not authorized to even have. The vice president doesn't have that authorization, just like I don't have that well, I don't now, but even when I was in the CIA, I never had that authorization. And I was there in the trenches working with that stuff all the time, right? Even what I can do, and obviously I'm Blackbeard could have been one of my assets, and I recruited him, and now he's giving me the secrets. And now I have, literally I'm conducting espionage, and I have incriminating evidence on me, and it's out in the open, and I might have to, transport it one way or other. Like, so I've got some authorizations, but once it goes into this realm right here, I can't print it out and take it home. It's got to stay in the skiff. It's got to stay in the agency or wherever, or whatever form you're operating in, or it's got to get destroyed once you upload it into, and I'll just stop right there. But they've come out and said he's guilty of doing this. We're not going to charge him with anything because he's mentally incapable. Okay. So does everybody see what I'm saying? Because he didn't just commit these crimes. These crimes are old. So you're telling me now that he's innocent of those crimes from years ago because he wasn't mentally fit. Well, hang on. Are you saying he's not mentally fit now, so we can't punish him, or he can't be found guilty because he wasn't mentally fit when he committed these crimes? Which effing one is it? Because neither one of those fucking sound good to me.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Blackbeard.
I think the best prism to view this through, especially when you look at, and it's not just, like Putin, you could look at other world leaders and they are able to form coherent sentences. The reason that this is happening, in my opinion, is it is a psychological warfare operation of a demoralization campaign against the West. It's part and parcel of the same thing when you talk about the borders, when you talk about the flooding of drugs, when you talk about the destruction of the money, whatever is controlling these world systems, whatever is directing it, and I have ideas about it, but whatever is doing it, it's decided to take down the West, and it's hitting it. It's a full spectrum assault. It's total war on every level, and to give you a leader that a child can see should not, an alleged leader that a child can see should not be in that position based on their cognitive functioning, regardless of whether the man is an honest man or a dishonest man. I mean, when you get to that level, you know, it strains credulity to think that there is an honest or a decent man at that level. To be quite honest with you,
Right.
so it isn't that for me. I expect that, but why direct and obvious incompetence? And the answer is to shove it in your face, to show to the world, to make you a laughing stock to the world, to make you despair within yourself, so that you're like, this is the representative of my country that can't form a coherent sentence. And it's war on your mind. It's not accidental. I mean, you can think it is if you want. It's, wow, you just got in there, and sorry, I just saw a note pop up there, but yeah.
Hey, hang on. Sorry, that was my first mark. Your mic is muted. I was just trying to answer you as you were looking at that Blackbeard. No, I'm just throwing out there, if people are watching, just want to see if we can get some people engaged. You know, come on, everybody, leave a comment. Yeah. Do you think Biden's got his stuff together? If you think he does, give us a why. If you think he's got some mental issues, and I don't wish him ill, but like if you were like, hey, there's just no way, then leave it in. Let's just see what if anybody's willing to comment here.
I think it's cruel the way that the power structure is using him, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that I love him, 100%. But I think it's inappropriate. It's really inappropriate.
It's incredibly sad because look, there's like, and think about how evil the people around him must be to be willing to, like, you know, subjugate a man. Like, hey,
look at his wife.
I'm going through physical stuff. Like, let's just say tomorrow I have a stroke or something else, or like my back just totally goes out and I'm immobile the rest. Dude, I don't want people using me as a tool or a prop, or
right.
Like. So to Blackbeard, to your point, man, how just disgusting and sad that the people who quote unquote love and care about him, well, they love and care about that power more than they care about him as a person. So maybe, I don't know if that says something. I guess it says something about them, him, and all of us, I suppose, too. Yeah, it's because you're right, man. It's just, come on, I don't wish that upon anybody. That's
morally bankrupt, man.
Yeah.
So, all right. I don't want to beat that horse to death, but I mean, final comments on that, because I guess that's where we're going on the Mr. Tucker Carlson interview. Redbeard, what do you think? Was it a good interview? How would you rate it?
I honestly, like, I tried to watch it as unbiased and objective as I possibly can. For me, I think it was particularly one of the better interviews. I would say, at least in my opinion, if we're doing out of 10, I would say an 8, just because of the fact that, like, it's one of those interviews that a lot of people kind of, after everything was said and done there, it's like, well, like, he didn't ask very, like, difficult questions, or he wasn't as abrasive as he could have been. But in the end of the day, like, and Mark, I think you kind of brought this up. I also think he kind of understood who he was talking to, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think one of his aims was the fact that he wanted to get him to really, like, talk about his perception of things. And whenever you come out hyper abrasive, you're going to get less of the perhaps the real perception or the truth or something that you want, and you're going to get more of the state line. And that's not saying that there wasn't propaganda there, that there wasn't state lines, but it was a more perhaps real conversation between two guys to some degree. And I think that's why it worked. And I mean, my God, Putin spent over 45 minutes explaining a very summarized, mind you, history of how most of this stuff came to be, that we in the United States are extremely ignorant on. So I thought it was very interesting. And I kind of enjoyed it, honestly. It was a nice break from all the terrible interviews that we have here with our politicians or people that we see all the time. So,
right on. Blackbeard, any comments on that? Add, subtract?
I guess I like the history portion. Other than that, I felt that it wasn't a very productive interview. Even frankly, the president there came across as like a Western liberal elite to me, to be honest with you.
Say that
Yeah.
last part again.
He came across as a Western liberal elite to me, even though he's Eastern. Like his positions on things, like he doesn't he gives us he kind of like plays around the idea of nationalism with the whole, well, this is where Russia came from, but he doesn't really hit it. Like he's not like, we're Russian people, this belongs to Russia. And I'm not even saying I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, I would have liked to have seen like a truly like contrary perspective. Now maybe he doesn't have that. Maybe this is, just another reflection of modern times. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't terribly impressed with it at all, to be honest with you. I did not find it very impressive.
All right. I was trying to find something. I'll come right back here. Sorry. Just something when you guys said some stuff, and I saw it earlier, but I'll have to find it later. But what you just said, Blackbeard, and maybe the closing comments on this is what you said. He came across to you. He appeared to you to be no different from, how did you say it? Our Western or our Democratic elite. How did you just say that?
Yeah, Western liberal elite. For example.
Well, okay, so
yeah.
so that's my kind of comment right there. So in a weird way, you're basically saying, like, okay, so he's a communist. Like you're making this. Look, they're still communists, right? And that's what he grew up in, and that's what he is. And he can say he's Orthodox and whatever, but and then you're making this comparison to what we see happening in America, and in a weird way. I'm laughing because, I don't know, you maybe have meant that as an insult. And I'm just trying to find the irony of like, well, yeah, but you just compared him to like a large section of America. And I think that's the problem, because a large section of America has that thought process, but that large section of America, are the same people who's pissed off at Tucker Carlson for interviewing him. Maybe it's because they don't want to have that mirror shoved in front of their face. Like, oh, that is exactly who we are.
It's because to create a statue, a work of art, like Michelangelo, you have to take the stone and you have to chip away at it. And in a way, that's kind of a violent act. And it is never the comfort that we have that molds us and shapes us into people of strength or wisdom. It's always the struggles that we're forced to overcome or succumb to. And when you live in the bubble of decadence and opulence intergenerationally, when you don't know what it is to struggle on any particular level, it isn't even necessarily a fault in the character, but the character will be faulted because of it, because there isn't any challenge to strengthen it. There's no metaphorical weight to lift. And so in their opulence, they become myopic. They have tunnel vision, where they see the world through the prism of their social sphere, which is very insular and all of the same class. And they go to the same universities, and they go to the same clubs, and they have the same friends, and they drive the same cars, and they go to the same restaurants, and et cetera, et cetera. And we do that with our peers, but the difference is that opulence breeds a kind of naivete and weakness. And I think there's actually a crisis of competence in the leadership, at least at the upper managerial level within Western civilization. I think above it, there's active measures being taken to intentionally and strategically and intelligently bring down the West. But I think at a lower level, you have the true believers that are raised in this decadence, and they don't see, well, why can't the world just be fair? And everybody wants that. Like, nobody, like, if your child, somebody gives that your brother or your sister 2 cookies and you get 1, you're like, well, what's up with that? So there is that impulse in us, but at the same time, a lot of this, like, and I don't even know that communism and like fascism is an appropriate like axis today. People decry the left and the right, but at the same time, especially in like New Age, they're all like, well, everything is vibration, everything is frequency. Well, guess what? Every wave has a peak and a trough. There's male and female, there's tall and short,
Yep.
there's darkness and light, and
hot
that's
and
the way
cold.
Yeah.
hot and cold. That's the way the world is polarized. It is.
Yeah.
But and that's why they talk about, well, even said in the interview, well, we're entering a multipolar world. Well, what does that
Yeah.
mean? I mean, that's a reference to like magnetism, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's a metaphor, but
Well,
so
it actually
it's one of,
stems from realism. So it's like the realist theory, like, trying to break the world into like, so the argument would have been that it's actually been a unipolar world because the United States was a hegemony, had world
there's no
hegemony.
such thing.
Well,
There's no such thing as
I'm just saying from like a political relations
I
Yeah.
get it.
conflict, kind of, from that, type of study, that's where that is coming from. It didn't really have anything to do with,
Yeah.
kind of, I think, in the direction. It's just more classical, realist, international relations type
Yeah.
of verbiage, or DC and politician type
Right.
of speak. So, yeah, but it
Everybody
it
wants
stems
to
from
rule
that
the
whole
world.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So, and now that was an interesting thing that Putin said in the interview. He said, "Well, the human brain is divided into hemispheres." That's exactly
Yeah.
right. That's exactly right. And
He's not a stupid guy.
Well, just real quickly, but then Blackbeard, let's kind of wrap this up and you rehash that and we'll end it over to Redbeard. But just real quickly. So again, I just want to highlight one more point. That just shows you it's a different cultural way of looking at things.
Yeah.
That he brought that up, not because he was trying to be a smart ass or whatever. That's you just saw a window into how the people from another part of the world look and view and think about something. I thought that was like, so when I heard that, I wanted to make a note and I didn't write it down. I should have, but I wanted to make a note to highlight that because again, it really just shows you, hey, these are different people from us. They look and view the world through a different lens. So Redbeard or Blackbeard, excuse me, continue. And then we'll bring it back up to Redbeard to conclude this section right here. And by the way, don't forget, and Redbeard, I know you're going to want to do it before you run, but you can't give us our PowerPoint on the actual, so
yeah, no, it'll be brief.
Gotcha. Blackbeard.
so I just think that the idea is there are a lot of communist and fascist and other ideologies that persist to this day, but I think that it is naive to miss the importance of the evolutionized form that they've taken. For example, China is considered a communist country, but it has certain elements of market, I'm trying to remember the darn term, but the point is they actually call it state capitalism. It's and at the end of the day, if the state owns the means of production or the means of production owns the state, I think that what appears to be a divergent line with the two poles is actually more like a circle that ends up converging to the point where you're just like, I don't know that there's a meaningful distinction as a person living under these two systems. I think that we have a crisis of competency at the managerial level, at least, and even up into the upper levels of management. I could be wrong on that. And that may play an influence on like the projected outcomes as far as the AI revolution and things like that. Because, we become very soft. And the thing that's difficult about that is that and we're made soft so that we can be brought down. It was intentional, in my opinion. But the problem with that is that at a certain point, reality will burst through and we'll be forced into, again, either succumb or to greater strength. And so competency will then rise again, but not without great pain. And that's kind of my concern. But I just think that, like, is he a communist? If you look at like the speech from Network, it talks about there is no nation anymore. There is one homogenous corporate like blob of interconnected, whatever his speech is. And that's accurate, and technically, to be honest with you, a corporation is a creation of the state. This doesn't emerge naturally. This is something that was created in law through the governmental structure. And I think one of the most dangerous and one of the worst things that's ever been done is to grant corporations personhood. It's really been very detrimental to the human race.
You're muted, Mark.
That's the first one. Technically, that's the first one of the night.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good.
I called the other one on myself, so that doesn't count. That's the first one right there of the night. But
I'm proud of you, Mark.
I'm getting better, Dad. But Blackbeard, when you were describing that, all I could think of is fascism. Like you were describing fascism, right? Because that's what fascism, again, is state-owned means of capitalism. So, Redbeard, a final comment on that, and then let's kind of change gears and we'll go into one of the other subcategories.
Yeah.
Hang on. Are you going to do the Ukrainian part? Do I need to bring that up?
Yeah, I'll do that after I do the final mentions here. So,
well, that should be your final mention. You don't get two final mentions.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say quick to something that Blackbeard. Wow.
And you're the one who doesn't drink.
Yeah. No, I have no excuse. But I'm happy that Blackbeard brought up incorporation, because there is something behind that, and what's been happening to our country. Because when you look at the realm of incorporation, and you look at how the states are and how the federal government is, and I know that this is a rabbit hole that I'm sure Blackbeard will like to explore, but this is a topic I do want to explore down the road here. So I just wanted to say that because that does factor into like the Federal Reserve and a lot of other entities as it pertains to like fiat currency and all of that. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Well, I was glad you said Federal Reserve, because that needed to come up in this conversation. Yep. All right.
Yep.
So let's hit that. Make a note. We'll do that another time. But that 100%. Absolutely does need to be spoken about. You are correct.
Yep. So, so for my
all right, don't make this an hour-long military adventure here, right? And then the Third Panzer Army came in from the north, and they touched tips. You can't. That's not the proper term, Redbeard.
Hey, to be fair, I think you would like a war documentary, Mark. You're very much, you're kind of into that stuff.
I just like how you made DB. DB was doing such a good job in the podcast, dude, of not laughing when you said and then the tips will touch.
Yeah,
it was too good, man. It was too good.
Well, look, speaking of tips, anyways, if we look at the southern.
This is I did put the right slide, right? This is the slide you sent me. Okay, gotcha. All right.
So we'll start with the slide here, and then I'll have a couple other points to make. But we'll start with the picture that's shown up here first. This is Avdiivka. This is a hotly contested area for fighting between the Russians and the Ukrainians. If you listen to what I had brought up on Tuesday, very briefly, there's a lot of aggressive fighting going on. Avdiivka is considered a pretty critical point. If Avdiivka falls, it's going to collapse a big section of the front, which means the Russians will have a lot of momentum going into more of Western Ukraine. So it's a pretty vital area for Ukraine to hold. But right now, as you can see down by the lower, kind of the southeastern tip there, that's kind of pointing out where that rifle is. I did see an updated version even from this that showed that tip extended a little bit farther up and west, so a little bit more northwest. I would assume that that's slightly contested though, so don't take that for fact, but I did see that jutting out a little bit more earlier.
But to your point, the goal of encirclement here is those two rifles. So the rifle up in the north, the upper part, and the rifle. That's the pincer movement. Correct. And you can see the urban area where the bomb and the in the acrylic Cyrillic letters. That's the Avdiivka. So that's the area that's about to be encircled. And one of well, so Jeremy, do you want to say why this is important? What this really kind of potentially means?
Well, so again, like. When you have, so what you see right now is a cauldron. I think we can, Mark, would you agree that that's kind of shaping a cauldron?
Oh, it definitely
is. So
and by the way, they're only attempting to take a small chunk of it. I mean, because if you look at that, this map was blown up. They could have easily, this encirclement could have been taken up in the north, to the northwest, and even entrapping and potentially, But there must not be as many military targets up in the northwest in that eastern salient, that bulge. That's probably where in that urban area, that's where the main Ukrainian forces are currently located.
Right. So, and I want to point out that this cauldron is a big deal, because what happens is right now Ukraine's got quite a decent amount of forces still left in there. They're actively fighting the Russians. Last I checked, I don't know if they pulled out since the video or the episode on Tuesday, but I believe it's the 110th Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainians was still there, which is, it's not good. You don't want to sacrifice a mechanized brigade. That's a very powerful asset that you have, and if they're caught up in heavy shelling, if you lose armored vehicles or anything like that, along with the contingency of any infantry that you have, that's a huge blow. You know, I'm not a military.
Just to add to that, because I did see
Yeah.
something this morning. So as of yesterday, most likely,
Yep.
like, you know, one of the commanders was like, "Hey, look, you know, we are going to have to get out of here or it's going to be big trouble for us, right?" So
Right.
so they're even kind of coming out and saying, you know, it's shit or get off the pot. We either have to
Right.
hold the line or or retreat, because if the line collapses, we will. But Jeremy, and to anybody watching and listening. Look, I don't know the makeup, the table of organizational equipment that of the Ukrainian military. I don't know, you know, the 3rd Mechanized Guard, you know, regiment. I don't know how they are, but that unit that's in there is one of their best mechanized units. Like,
yes,
you know, and if they lose them, it's going to be a major blow to their war effort. Period.
It would suck, because, you know, what you're starting to see is a lot of these places like Bakhmut, or as the Russians call it, Artyomsk. What happens is, in these critical areas, they do have a tendency to start with some of their more veteran forces, guys who've been there, who've been fighting, they understand the situation. But the problem of it is they protract, or they elongate that engagement for so long that it becomes to where you're just wasting assets. And if you remember the very top there, that very top rifle that was starting that northernmost tip, and I explained this, I believe it was Tuesday as well, Mark, that's very close to the MSR. And for those of you that don't understand what an MSR is, that's a main service road. So when you cut that off, and from my understanding, that's the primary MSR going into Avdiivka. So if you cut that off, you're essentially cutting off the lifeline for any form of escape of the Ukrainian forces. So they do have to, there is a sense of urgency to figure out, are you going to reinforce the position, or are you going to pull your forces back to a more defensible position to regroup and restructure yourselves to be able to either attempt to retake it or to stop them after they get that particular area. So that's the update so far. But aside from that, I don't have anything else for Avdiivka. I do have 2 other points, but Mark, I'll let you kind of interject if you have anything else to talk about for Avdiivka.
Oh, wrong one. You know, no, we'll just see what happens. So again, you know, you and I were talking about it the other day. You know, and this kind of goes back into the interview. You know, Tucker Carlson, you know, Putin interview. You know, in the mainstream media, losing their shit. You know, like, you know, all we've heard for the last 2 years was like, you know, oh, the Russians are horrible. Well, if there's, you know, so it's that Moneyball analogy, you know, which has become a popular analogy to use in the last couple of years. Hey, if he's a good hitter, why doesn't he hit? Like, if the Russian, you know, like, hey, if Trump is, you know, it's the same thing when you, like, people want to, like, criticize Trump. Oh, he's a moron. Well, if he's a moron, then why are you scared about him? You know, or if he's a moron, why is he such a successful businessman? You know, like, it's always, you know, you just see the story constantly flip, you know, and they're like, oh, our guys are doing great. Well, if our guys are doing great, why aren't we winning? You know, so it's just that kind of thing. That's my only kind of comment on it. And, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, and you heard Putin kind of say this in the interview, and this will be my last comment, because well, maybe we don't have to talk as much about the other ones, but the other topics. But I mean, he even said it, like, we could end this. You know, at the end of the day, you know, there are definitely times where war it's what you got to do, and unavoidable. And I'm not just some guy saying that. You know, I've spent 30 plus years of my life in the service to this country, either in the military or the agency. I've been downrange multiple times, so I'm not just talking out of my ass here.
So you know a thing or two.
So there are times in which, yeah, it is a struggle and it's a struggle worth having. But there's also a time where it's like, is this really worth the loss, of additional life? Where does the humanistic or the humane side of us come in, and the diplomatic? And to our case, selfishly as Americans, to hear Chuck Schumer saying that if we don't pass this bullshit border bill, then Americans are going to have to go fight in Ukraine. Tell me why. And you heard that kind of.
How are they even related?
And you heard that kind of echoed in Putin's comments today. It's like, what the hell would, because it was kind of a challenge to see if he would come out and say like what, I just forgot his name. The actual president said like, look, if this happens, we're going to have to resort it's going to have to be nuclear. That was not that wasn't Medvedev. That wasn't him who said it. It was somebody else. But anyway. So wrap it up and let's kind of transition this over into I guess kind of the whole Iranian piece, which is really more of a conversation about what the hell's going on in the Middle East.
Right. Yeah. So just two final notes. So they did find, I did mention on Tuesday that Valery Zaluzhny is not the commander of the Ukraine armed forces anymore. He was replaced with a gentleman whose name is, I'll pull it up here in just a second, Syrskyi, Alexander Syrskyi. He's an interesting fellow. He's known by the Ukrainian troops as the Butcher. He got that name, from my understanding, from what he did in Bakhmut, which is he was really well known for just sending people into a meat grinder. And it apparently it didn't seem like he really cared. And this is, the attitude coming from Ukrainian troops that have either known of him, been in his area of operation, or been under him and managed to survive. So the Ukrainian troops don't have necessarily a positive view of this guy, and they're not quite sure that he's going to be the most stable person to command the entire armed forces. So I guess we'll see how this works. But if that's the tone that's coming from the general troop, that's not a very promising thing. And he also comes from a Russian family. He actually went to the military academy, I believe, in Moscow, Russia. He was born in Russia. His father, from my understanding, was a decorated Russian veteran. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to try and pull some stuff out of the Russian playbook, or if he just doesn't really care and wants to just throw bodies at the solution or at the problem. That being said,
on that note, kind of putting a bow on this and then addressing some comments that came in real quickly. Keyline Warrior, thank you very much. Pretty good podcast. Thank you. You should have go watch this when it's video on demand, when it's after it's not live, or just rewind and look at the problems we had at the very beginning. Because Rumble out of nowhere threw a curveball at us, and I had to do something that I'd never had to do to go live on Rumble before, but we just had to do that tonight. But thank you. But then I just posted Angry Viking Veteran, and same thing, sir. We kind of already just covered that. But yes, I think to answer the question here, I'll just show it one more time. The question is, if there's really fighting in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but Redbeard he doesn't even know what I'm about to say, but I know he can attest this. There's so many times I ask him when I see the same bullshit footage, I'm like, this doesn't even make any sense. Like either we've been lied to our whole life. This is not how the Russians, this is not how we as Americans were in our training, in the Cold War. This isn't how the Russians fight. I never see, I always just see some one lone T-90. I'm like, where's the rest of his platoon? Where's the infantry support? Where's the there's none of that stuff. So I don't know if we're just getting selective, but there's still serious fighting going on. And that's what we just talked about. Yeah. Redbeard, just say the name. I'll screw it up. You're way better at it. Dialect. The name of the village. That's the focal point of this. And
so currently right now it's Avdiivka. Is the primary area of battle as of right now. That's predominantly
kind of the hot spot. Yeah, the hot spot. And then last but not least, I do not have any insight from guys in country. I don't know if Redbeard does, but we'll have to save that for another time because we don't want to go all night long, and we got 2 other subjects we kind of want to jump into here. So, but thank you guys for leaving comments.
Yeah,
Very,
appreciate you guys.
very
Thank
much
you.
appreciate it. Now Redbeard, so Stephen had to pop off for a quick second.
Yep.
And I want to just, okay, I'm going to remove this real quickly. Give me 1 sec. Remove from studio. There we go. All right. So I would like to, if we can, let's bring this into, again, Iran. And you've noticed like that whole thing has been kind of hush hush recently too. Like that suddenly seems it's no longer in the news cycle. So, the Houthis trying to interdict, shipping in the Red Sea, how this pertains. Well, I think it's kind of quiet because they really want it to go away. The fact that, we had 3 Americans, killed in Jordan,
right.
As the result of direct action, in this case, indirect fire. I can't remember if they claimed that this one was a drone. I can't remember if this was a drone attack or if this was like a surface.
I believe it was a missile strike. If I remember.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too. I thought it was more of a ballistic type of thing. A missile type of, and it wasn't like a mortar. They're not that close.
Right.
But I wanted to bring up, and this isn't going to do any justice here. I'll try to share this here real quickly. And unfortunately, this is behind a paywall, you guys. So, but a friend of mine who was actually on our last live stream, who might chime in here tonight, he and I both served in Western Iraq, and he sent me this article. It won't let me. I couldn't move the thing over because, like I said, again, it's behind a paywall. But if you are a Wall Street Journal subscriber, this is an interesting article to read. And here, this might. I'll play this just a little bit of it. Let me try to bring that full screen. And right there, that's Al-Qaim, right? That's kind of what I wanted to point out.
Yep.
And then I'll get this. Let me just get this off there we go. So that's Al-Qaim in Western Iraq. So, Western Iraq was the wild, wild west, back in the day when, AQZ was still around, Al-Qaeda was around, but, it's been so long. I can't remember his name, but he was like one of the big Al-Qaeda guys we're after in Western AQZ. I keep thinking, but his little nickname, but that's Al-Qaim, Ana, Rutba, Al-Assad. It just that whole area, Korean Village, 69. There's all these areas out there, and these and that's Sunni country. So this is just what I wanted to say. Kind of when we didn't have time the last when we did this in the podcast. That's the heart of Sunni country. So when Gulf War II went in, we actually went in and invaded Iraq. The wild, wild west. That's So think of Fallujah. Fallujah's out near Ramadi. So you remember, that fighting still kept going for a long time. And that was the hotbed of insurgency, besides inside of Baghdad and car bombs in the green zone, and rocket attacks. But that was the heart of the Sunni country. That's like the Ba'ath Party was out there and all this, like the Sunni Central. So it's so interesting to me. So again, we just struck a target in an area that would be traditionally a deep Sunni area, but we were striking Iranian supported militias. Okay, so what the hell just happened in there? What did we do? How did we squander the victories that we made? Because there's no way, if you were a Shia and you were out in Western Iraq, man, you were a big Vegas gambler, because you would be lucky if you got out of there alive. And I know that sounds weird. How do you know somebody's religious preference by just looking at them? I don't know, but they freaking do. They know that shit.
Right.
Got special handshakes and codes, the guy. I'm sorry, I was just about to throw myself under the bus, like the Masons do. Special handshakes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's so weird for me to see that we're striking targets back in the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Where I spent time, but now we're striking supposedly Shia targets out there. I don't know what the hell's going on. And I think, Redbeard, this is where I'll shut up on my little diatribe. But going back to your saying, Well, did the Shia just, because this is a possibility. Imagine this, middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
you just drive out to some place, you know the desert, you get out there, you set up, your little system off the bed of a Land Cruiser, a Hilux.
Yep.
You launch, some type of ballistic or, rocket propelled type of, ordnance
Yep.
across the border at a U.S. base in Jordan. I guess that's technically possible, but something that Redbeard has said many times, I still believe we need to have forward-based materials, and where the time is right, we also have to have forward-based U.S. personnel. But I don't understand why we had people in Jordan. What was going on? I don't even know. Why do we have people in Syria? That's kind of my thing. And it just saddens me that suddenly the area that we eventually won over, we got those people to come over to our side and help us fight against Al Qaeda. We saved a lot of American lives, killed a lot of bad guys out there. And now that place is lobbing rockets at us again. And now suddenly the Shia are operating out there. I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
All right. Whoever wants to respond to that. Blackbeard.
Well,
There you go. You got it.
Yeah. If you're not like tapped into that thing anymore, if you've left, there's just, where are you going to get the information from? And there is something that was used by the colonial British in India. It's called the Cobra effect. That's what it came to be called. And basically what it was is that they had a problem with cobra infestations that was killing a lot of people. And so what they did is they put up a reward, and you kill a cobra, you bring it in, we'll pay you for it. And so it stands to reason you think, well, then the cobra population is going to go down, problem solved, right? Well, wrong. Because what happened is that people started raising cobras intentionally so that they could kill them, so that they could get paid, and the cobra population actually expanded. So we do these things, we take these kinetic actions, and we think it's going to go one way, but there's always the chaos that you don't anticipate. And so it's like we won them over, and now it's a totally different group that's operating, and somehow they've become antagonistic towards us again. Like, if you're not in the thick of it anymore, you're not going to get that information from the news. You'd have to get it either from being there or for someone who's been there and is able to divulge those kinds of things, assuming that they even know the answer to that. But the point is there's always unintended consequences. Human behavior is fundamentally not all that complex. It operates on incentives. Everyone, there are variations within human beings, but we all are technically the same species and have the same kind of minds. And that's, why things like the subconscious and archetypes are able to appeal to broad swaths of humanity, because we actually have a lot in common. But that is to say that the complexity is born by the interaction of things which are fundamentally not complex. It's the building cascade of events. It's like chaos theory of the butterfly can flap its wings in Central Park and you get rain rather than sunshine. So why is it happening? I am conspiratorial by nature, in that I believe that very wealthy moneyed interests will gather together and strategize about how to maintain and grow their power, because it behooves them, because that it's a fundamental human imperative to do that. And if you were in that position, it's very likely that you would do that as well. But that having been said, I don't think everything is orchestrated. I don't think everything is under the thumb of some manipulative genius or series of geniuses. I think that there's a lot of complexity, that we do take a lot of actions, and that most people are doing what they believe to be right, and that the problem that we have is not really a battle between bad people and good people. It's a battle between fundamentally corrupted human souls, each of whom believes that they are good and is doing what is right. And sometimes, doing what is right for your interests is perceived by your enemies as doing what is wrong for theirs. That's really the fundamental distinction between friend and enemy, isn't it? So I guess that's kind of a long-winded way to say that there will always be unintended consequences to the actions that we take. As I understand it, Al Qaeda was created. I think Zbigniew Brzezinski was working with the Soviets in Afghanistan that ultimately led to their creation, and then now you're fighting them later on, you know. And so it's there's always blowback for the actions that we take. All you can do is the best that you can do.
Well, I just want to add something in there again, just a little bit of a stupid type of student of history for those areas, you know, and if for nothing else, my own self-preservation, having spent a lot of time there, you know, we create, you know, it's the typical, it's typical how the United States government has become. We create a problem and then pretend we were the solution to the problem, right? We created, like, we just never seem to have the ability. Maybe we're just, as a people, we're just too, you know, again, and well, maybe this might be proven by how, if it's not immediate gratification and if it's not a click, I can't sit and read an article. How many people even actually read newspapers or news articles, you know, from front to, you know, from start to finish? I think there's, you know, been studies like, you know, if you don't get somebody's attention in the first 10 or 15 seconds, you know, you know, your video fails. Well, because people don't have the staying power anymore. We're not, you know, we're not engaged that way. So, you know, to what you're just saying, hey, we've got this great idea. We're going to go and we're going to involve ourselves in the lives of these people who are fighting against the Russians, the Soviets. We want to do it for our own selfish reasons. Do we really care about those people? Well, see, again, you know, I keep always coming back to Thucydides. You know, even if we're not sure, or, you know, we want to keep an, you know, like, well, you know, enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, then you want to keep that person as close as possible, because otherwise, you know, just like Iraq, and we just talked about, we squandered so many opportunities. I guess there it is. I'll shut up on that note right there. We have this weird capability of going in there and doing great things, and then we squandered the opportunities that come with it. I don't know if that kind of ties into what you're saying, Stephen, but that's how I interpret it, you know, from my perspective. We just always seem to squander the opportunities. It isn't that we're doing it to create another cycle of doing it again. We're just not smart enough to know how to, like, end it, put a bow tie on it, make life better for everybody, and then move on, you know, and try to do the next thing. Maybe it's not in mankind's interest, you know. Maybe we always need the drama. I mean, you know, I know that's a horrible thing to say, but shit, I don't know.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that conflict is inherent to the human condition, and for a long time, that's why I've thought that that part of this transhumanist secular utopian ideology is fundamentally genocidal. You know, for example, Ray Kurzweil talked about there would come a time where we would all be linked through the chips and that, and we would hear the whispers of other minds and all that, and essentially you lose self-identity. And I think that the reason is that I think that they believe that so long as there exists a multiplicity of even semi-independent minds, because propaganda alone, which is really, I mean, it's transmitted digitally, but it's really more of an analog effect when you put it in light of something like a brain chip connected to the cloud, which we'll see if they get that. I mean, that's going to require an awful lot of competency, and it seems to be in short order. But I think that what they believe, and this is my speculation, so I want to make that clear, but I do think that this is the case. I think that they believe that as long as there exists a multiplicity of at least even semi-independent mind, that the possibility for conflict exists, and that therefore the solution to conflict and to bringing about world peace is to eliminate all individuality whatsoever. I mean, fundamentally, not metaphorically, like literally get rid of it.
Well, I mean, so that's interesting. I was just going to say, okay, well, let's just try to bring this let's try to bring this back over to the actual boots on the ground, what's happening on the ground right now moment. But as you were saying that, though, if you were paying attention in this ecosphere, you know, that is news or world politics or, you know, geopolitical, you know, however you want to frame this. But to your point, Blackbeard, I mean, there's a lot of that's happening where you just look within our current culture, you know, break down the family, break down the person, you know, pay homage to the state, you know, in all of these type of things. It is well, and then look, how many videos have you guys seen? Now we're kind of I'm taking this in a little bit of a rabbit hole, but with that new, it's not Oculus, but whatever the new Apple goggle thing is, there's already, I don't know if they're fake parody videos, but there's already tons of videos of people walking through the street doing weird breakdance moves as they're living in their alternate reality. So the individual is being broken down. You're not even there as the person interacting with everybody around you. You know, I'm sure they can still see, because one guy's walking across the street And it does appear that he does see a car and kind of moves, but like, yeah, the individual, maybe, do we hate her? So I like what you're saying, but I kind of want to stop right there because we're getting into too metaphysical of a conversation. Not that I don't mind that, but let's bring it back into the actions on the ground, because that's the right here and the right now. And, you know, and it begs the big question. So what is happening and what is this administration doing about it? Redbeard, as you take a giant chug of, that was probably homemade vodka from your bathtub, I'm assuming, you know?
Niet. No, that's not the case. No, I think you guys bring up pretty good points. And one thing I did want to kind of hit on is, you know, Mark, you were talking about the Shia and the Sunnis and stuff like that, and then in the boots on the ground aspect. And I hate to even bring this up, but I did hear somebody at one point say, you know, one of the problems that we'll have, whether it's the Mideast or whether it's Ukraine or whatever area it is, that we tend to put people on the ground in, and then all of a sudden we cut off funding or we take people out or whatever. Look, you're creating a situation in which you go to a place, you do all of this stuff, and then you build up this hatred towards us. And then all of a sudden, when people realize you're not getting supplies or we're not going to protect you or whatever the case is, that's how you create, you know, that's how you create enemies. So, for instance, not just the Mideast, but Ukraine, I've heard people speculate that if we pull out funding from a place like Ukraine, perhaps, and what you have in Ukraine is you have some very extreme sections in Ukraine, much like you have very extreme sections in the Middle East. And if you ever notice, those people that become somewhat kind of dependent on the supplies and the money and the aid and all of that stuff, whether they steal it or not, where do they end up? They end up at our doorstep, and we kind of create this monster, and then we can justify, like, well, you know, they came here and they did this, and so we have to go there and we have to deal with this ourselves. It's like, okay, but like, if you didn't do the Meals on Wheels with these people, and you didn't go over and you didn't start all this stuff and you didn't prod them and push them to do all of these different things, we wouldn't be here at this juncture. So I think it even plays more into, again, that conversation we had previously about why do we have bases in places we don't need to have them. You know, you're just asking for trouble, and it's an invitation to put boots on the ground, more often than not unjustifiably, because we pissed in somebody's Kellogg's, you know. So,
well, I don't mind pissing in somebody's cornflakes if somebody, you know, when it's deserved, right? You know, like there's times for that. You know, there's definitely times for going in and breaking other people's shit. But you have a plan, you have allies, you have an exit strategy, and you keep it quick. You go in there, you get the task at hand done. Like, you know, Afghanistan, you know, Tora Bora 1. We went in there, we broke the back of the Taliban. We didn't find bin Laden, but once we had that established, and that should have been like, all right, guys, we're done. And now somebody would say, well, that's a shitty thing to do. You just came in there and yeah, but they're grown-ups. They can figure it out. You know, like, hey, it's on them. We can still help from a distance if it's in our interest, right? But we had our interest was this guy was the mastermind of the biggest, the most heinous terrorist attack in the history of the United States. You know, so I was just kind of thinking about something else, but real quickly, like, well, you know, okay, there could be this, but so we had a very clear objective, and we had very clearly defined justifications on the international, you know, the international relations level. We had so many countries backing our actions, you know, because lots of other citizens who were killed in the Twin Towers. Yeah, exactly, right. So so you have your allies, you have a clear objective: break the back of the Taliban, capture, you know, Osama bin Laden and anyone else, you know, associated with Al Qaeda, disrupt or destroy Al Qaeda, or, you know, because look, you know, sometimes when you go and you hit a target and maybe you don't achieve your objective, maybe you didn't kill your high value target or whatever it was you're doing, but you're causing these elements now to operate outside of what they were planning on. And when people start doing that, mistakes are made. That gives you opportunities, whether that's again, and if you've got allies, well, one could argue whether Pakistan was really an ally of ours, all that much throughout the conflict, but to your point, I think so many times in that region, we just get played for chumps. It's like, hey, look, the Americans are stupid enough. They're going to give us tons of money. And we don't know what you're talking about. There ain't no bin Laden here in this country, nothing to see here, folks, so. So just to your point, though, I'm just trying to make a counter argument. Like, I do think it's time. It's justified, but when it's justified, it also needs to be in our country, at least. Yeah, I know the president, they've got war powers acts and there's certain things you can do, but by God, if you're going to be at it for that long, there should have been a congressionally sanctioned declaration of war. It should have been totally above board and everybody should have been on top of that.
No, and that's just it. I mean, look, and I can't agree more with what you said. If we're going to do something short and sweet, short, impactful, sweet. I don't know why my camera's.
Yeah, your camera's pretty blurry. Yep.
Yeah, I've tried fixing it, but
that's because you're throwing shade. You're throwing shade, dude.
But I guess to kind of to summarize my point, it's like if we're going to do something, we do need to go in. We need to go in hard. We need to go in fast, achieve our objectives, and get it done. Because look, you save lives. You mitigate how much you're taking out of the treasury. You're mitigating the amount of resources it takes, and you're doing it quite honestly. When you expedite that process and you do it effectively, you're also mitigating the moral or ethical implications that may arise. The less amount of time that you stay in a region or in a place to do whatever it is you're going to do, typically, there's less ramifications because you're going there, achieving your objective and getting out. And we used to be that way. We used to go in, no nonsense, and we used to achieve objectives and get things done. But now, here's the thing. There's too much money to be made in the perpetual wars. There's too much money to be made in pissing in everybody's pond. So that's not a thing anymore because they don't care about our servicemen and women. They don't care about the amount of money that we spend or the amount of money that we've invested in this process. We have people that generally don't care about anything other than the amount of money that goes into their wallets. So until we as the people go out of our way to change who we put in these positions of power, and we hold those people accountable, nothing's going to change. They're going to continue to send your sons and daughters to these places, and they're going to come up with a narrative and a line that makes it sound good while they make money off of these investments, because that's what it is. They don't
and there's not even a risk. There's not even a risk to making money because it's not them, their husbands or wives, their sons or daughters going off and fight. It's all of us knuckleheads doing it. Hey, I want to play one quick clip that I think encapsulates the spirit of what we're kind of talking about here. We're using the forever wars, and who was it? BCP or who was it came up with FW2? Forever Wars 2.
Me.
Was that you, Redbeard? Yeah. So just a quick clip that I think encapsulates FW2, Forever Wars 2. So here we go. Oh no, that's not the right one. Oh no, I like that, but that's not what I was trying to play. Sorry, I screwed that up. Hey, that's my third strike for the night. I guess next time Jeremy can take over the behind the scenes.
It was great though.
Well, that's not what I was looking for. This one's better. Okay. Well, maybe that should encapsulate or illustrate or be a demonstration of how everybody should feel in today's society in America. But this is what I want to say, which had more into what you were saying, Jeremy, about like why are we even doing this type of thing. So here's what I really wanted to share. All right, and here we go.
For king, for country. That's why you men ought to join this fight.
You do what you want with your own skull. Do not be telling us what we ought to do with ours.
You call yourself a patriot and loyal subject to the crown,
Do not call myself subject to much at all.
All right. Did that? I don't know if that actually
Yeah.
came out good enough, but
That's good.
could you guys hear that? I'm not always 100% sure how that
Yeah. No, that
sounds
was
on the
good.
other end, but no, but that's it right there. You know, like, hey, Mitch McConnell, you know, hey, Lindsey Graham, we'll go off and do it. You know, like I think it was you, Redbeard, or someone else the last time. There are mechanisms. If you want to go fight for Ukraine or if you want to go fight for Russia,
Yep.
you can go off and do
for
it.
it.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, John Wayne. Go off with your bad
Yeah.
self. But I don't want to pay another penny for these endeavors, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Ukraine, unless it is a direct threat to America. And that's, I didn't even plan this. This is a great segue into the final, chapter of this live stream. But unless it's a direct, clear and present danger to the United States, our people, our way of life, and I guess at that point, like the world, right? The Nazis, were clearly a threat against the world. But at that, but if it's not that stuff, it's simply like, hey, here's the phone book. We're right here. When you guys grow up, you can give us a call. Until then, F you. Maybe I'll do a little business with you, here, there, when it's in my interest, but until then, if you want to treat women that way, if you want to throw gays off of buildings, if you want to, steal all the and be corrupt and do whatever, Ukraine, you guys do you, but I'm not going to have any part of it. When you grow up, give me a call and maybe we can have a conversation. And if you F with me or threaten any of my people or whatever, I'm going to come in and break all your fucking shit. And then I'm going to get out of there. There'll be maybe a nice little steaming hot pile of FU in the middle of your living room. And you'll know, don't mess with my stuff anymore. Yeah. Whatever happened to those days.
Right.
Or whatever happened to that as a clear and concise, foreign policy. I'll be your friend until you start pissing on my head. And when you do that, don't tell me it's raining. I'm going to come in and break your toys.
Yeah.
Redbeard, I know you got to bounce. We've got BCP in the wings. He just chimed in. I can kind of see him here off screen, and he looks like a really pissed off Jeremiah Johnson right now. I don't know what's going on. I got a smile out of him. So
he's looking ready. He's
no, I know
ready.
you got to bounce, Redbeard. We're almost at an hour 30, and we'll just kind of wrap it up with the border. So can you stay for the border, or can you like another 15 minutes, or what?
I got a jet.
What a lame excuse.
I know.
All right, so you get final comments. We can't have you do the outro quite yet, but why don't you give us a final comment, and then we'll bring BCP on as well. Hey, and by the way, it's not a replacement; it's an improvement. Bringing BCP on for you.
Hey, I would agree with that. Yeah, no, he's a good-looking fella. So
a little smart assery on Friday night. All right, final words there, buddy.
Yeah. So no, I mean we've covered a couple different things, and I think the underlying sentiment overall is like we've got to become far more cognizant about where we place our efforts, how we place our efforts, and with whom we place our efforts. As it pertains to diplomacy and different relations and stuff like that. And I'm just gonna say, we had the potential. We had the potential to not even be where we're at with a country like Russia. We had the potential to not even be in the situations that we are at with many countries in the Middle East. We had the potential to do this, but because there was a financial incentive for people, i.e. not us, and because there's a lot of people that are just invested in this war hawkish nature, and because of the fact that it's like Mark, like you said, at no expense of themselves, but at the expense of the average American. Look, like we could have prevented bloodshed for our own people and for many other people. We could have avoided this, and we could have had many, many lucrative economic treaties and stuff like that in agreements. And most of the world had the potential to be thriving, but instead, this is the path that was chosen. And I can only hope that down the road we do have some type of economic relations with Russia. I hope that we can have some type of economic relations with the Middle East, and we can not be caught up in this perpetual wave of absolute death. It's unnecessary for the most part. So that's my 2 cents. Like let's save our sons and daughters and trade with each other instead of kill each other all the time over oftentimes very petty shit. So
Well, okay, then just one last thing before you go. I mean,
Yeah.
this just seems like to be a perfect time. I was going to save this till the end, but you just kind of made this come up full screen or to the forefront of the conversation.
Yeah.
Just the headline. I mean, like I can put these articles in there afterwards, but
Yeah.
right. So like to me, it's this, to your point, Jeremy, there's so many more important issues that we have to deal with in our own backyard, within our own county, our city, our state, our country,
Yeah.
our hemisphere, et cetera, our
Mhm.
own freaking big, awesome blue marble of a planet.
Yep.
And I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to roll over on my back and no, I already said it. Hey, I don't want to be messed with, but that's kind of the thing. But if I'm going to come and break your shit, man. But this to me, Jeremy, to your point, they're so, just even on philosophy and art and just being better.
Imagine where we could be if we spent less time killing each other.
Wow. Crazy freaking concept, right?
I know.
And then we get this kind of stuff coming. So, yeah. All right, Redbeard. Thank you
All right,
much.
brother.
Yeah. And it was in the middle of the podcast that your camera failed. So I don't it didn't fail, but
I don't know what the deal with that was. So
yeah. Well, that's probably the same reason why it didn't stream to Rumble like it normally did. I don't know.
probably.
Maybe you're just too damn pretty. Maybe you're just too damn good looking. And we just Blackbeard, kind of tweaked your monitor somehow because he couldn't be one up. So yeah, there you go.
It's better call Paul from the sidelines.
All right, I'm gonna bring in BCP. You
All
have
right,
a good
guys.
night, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, man.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, see you later, Redbeard.
Cheers.
All right, and we got BCP coming on. Dick, what up, BCP? How you doing, sir?
This is green. It's just a green, and it's glittery. Do you see that?
It is very glittery. Like, yeah. Okay, well, maybe that's
green.
Wow.
It's a John Deere green. That's all it is. I need to tuck that in or change it.
Yeah, you need to tuck that in because, I don't know. That is a little
weird.
Hey, we're bringing you on. And it's a perfect transition because we're, obviously kind of wrapping up. We've already covered Ukraine vis-a-vis or Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine. You heard we were just kind of talking the Middle East vis-a-vis Iran. Yep. We could go into a little bit more detail on that, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of ass clowns being supported by the Iranians launching missiles at our troops. We were just talking about why do we even have troops there or at international shipping. Now, maybe if we're going to have troops there to protect international shipping, then let's protect international shipping. And how do you do that? You destroy the people who are jeopardizing international shipping, and then you stop and you get out until somebody comes in and starts doing stupid stuff again, right? But we're not doing that. But so the segue right now was going to be about our border. But I want to give you a chance to come in with either a mad minute or any comments that you have on those other two subjects before we make that next switch.
So I did learn a lot listening to Blackbeard and Redbeard tonight, especially Redbeard. I know more about Ukraine than I ever thought I would know. So that thumbs up to him. I did want to mention before we move on about the Sunni versus Shia. I was listening to that, and honestly, you're going to have issues overall with any religion, but that one is a little more, a little more of an issue. So what do we have? We have Osama bin Laden was a Sunni. Okay. So do you automatically discount every Sunni and every Pakistani and so on? But, in every country, they're going to have a mix of Sunni and Shia in there anyway. But the only thing I wanted to mention on that point is Imran Khan, who was an actor, very similar. And I wish Jeremy was here, but similar to, I guess, the Ukraine situation. I think it's closer to the Trump situation. He was put in jail, and they took him out of office and put him in jail. And now he's out of jail, and his party is leading in all of the elections. Does it sound familiar?
But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they just put him under house arrest or prevent him from doing something just the other day? I don't follow Pakistani news as much as I used to, but I know there was just some, there's some controversy going on right now with the elections that are going on. Either they drug it out or they did something to Khan and his party, and it's just giving them cause to question things, right? It's like, well, hey, that looks really shady, so I'm going to think you did something shady, something like that. And I'm not saying Khan did it. I'm saying the current ruling party did. Am I missing that? Or I got that kind of right?
No. And Khan was popular like Trump. I mean, it was the same type of situation at the same time. They talked. They met a couple times, and I'm not saying you 100% trust somebody, but I think that the situations are so similar. That's all I wanted to point out. That you have a political leader that's put in jail, and then he comes back more popular than ever when he was already popular before. But the political class put him away, which is exactly what we're dealing with here with Trump. So there is a parallel there in a sense, but yeah, I'm just my thoughts there.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that because I think that there's something we could learn from that. And I don't, again, I'm not trying to take any sides in the Sunni versus Shia. That's up to them, not me. If you, I don't care who you are. If you're on, my side and you're a peaceful person, I'm all on board.
Well, what does Patrick say? I mean, if you love freedom, I love you.
Yep.
Yeah. But if you guys want to throw rocks at each other's glass houses, well, that's on you too. Again, I'm in the phone book. When you guys want to grow up, give me a call. We can sit and talk. Maybe we can do a little business. But until then, stay the F away from me as you guys figure your shit out. I don't know why we kind of and that's not an isolationist policy. I know right now somebody who watches this are like, oh, isolate. No, that's not isolationist. That just means I'm not going to get my nose involved in what's that old saying? I'm not going to stick my nose where it doesn't belong. All right, but kind of wrapping that. Well, let's stick our nose where it does belong. Our southern border, right? Let's just jump into that. Let's kind of spend the next 15, 20 minutes talking about that, and we'll wrap up this live stream. Which one of you? No, Blackbeard. You're just looking at me like, mother effer. I haven't talked in a while. You better. All right, let's come over to you. No, I saw that. I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right, let's come over to you. You start us off. Southern border. Go in whatever direction you want to go in. Good, bad. I have no idea. We should do this. We should do that. Right here. I'm going to bring us back full screen. One of our last live streams, we had Kevin, a friend of mine, former colleague of mine. He's a big highfalutin lawyer out in DC. He's been on a whole bunch of mainstream media interviews and stuff like that. And he came right out and started the whole thing saying, hey, he's a straight up liberal, on the left-hand side of the immigration policy, and at least you respect the guy because he's going to come out and he's saying, this is where I stand and this is what I'm going to try to argue in support of. Blackbeard, BCP, let's start it off with Blackbeard, but it doesn't matter wherever you guys want to start with this. I know when it comes to me, I'm going to talk about the national security implications. All right, let's go with Blackbeard first.
What border?
Our southern border. Oh, yeah, that was
what border?
No, that was good. I walked right into that. Hey, I walked right into that wall.
What wall?
Look,
what wall? Yeah, but okay. Nice. You set me up. I like it. Way to go.
It's very simple. It's very simple. It couldn't be more simple. If you claim to be a nation, but you have no boundaries to your nation, you are not a nation. Very simple. I could go on, but there's no need to say more than that. Don't pretend that it's this schizophrenic cognitive dissonance of holding two mutually exclusive ideas in the same sense that they're mutually exclusive. You're holding them as both true in the same sense at the same time in your mind. If you are a nation, you must have borders. If you do not have borders, you are not a nation. It is literally that simple, and there's nowhere to go from that. Now, you can say, well, I don't want a border. Okay, you don't have a nation. And that's what they want. They want no nation. And then there's people who want a nation to exist, who think that, people should make divisions, that conflict ensues for reason, that there are reasons that if you own a home, it's like, well, this is my property line. And sometimes people even put fences on that property line. They say good fences make good neighbors. There are reasons for these things. It happens on a microcosm and it happens at the macrocosm, on a small scale and on a large scale. So what people have to decide is, do we want to have a nation or do we not want to have a nation? And the people who don't want a border don't want a nation. And fair enough. I just happen to disagree. I kind of like the US. I kind of live here. I was kind of born here. My ancestors were born here.
That was 3 times where I didn't hit unmute myself. So I get no more strikes. I'm out. I got to have a better at bat for the rest of the game here. Hey, but to the point you're saying, you know, it has to follow logically, right? That's, again, we're adults here. We're not petulant children. It has to follow logically because, you know, what Blackbeard just said, if you don't want a nation, you don't want to have a border. Okay, well then take it down. Okay, well then, so here's the nation state with no borders. Okay, but the nation state is comprised of 50 indigenous states. Well, okay, but if there's no nation state indigenous border, then how can there be a state border then? And then if there's not a state border, then how can there be a county line? How can there be a, you know, and et cetera, et cetera. And it goes all the way down to the individual level, as Blackbeard has said. Then how do you even own property? You know, like, you know, why do you have that fence up around your property? That's not your property. You don't get to define the boundaries of what you own and what, you know, and what defines the Blackbeard family or the BCP family or the Mark family, you know. So to that point, I mean, it's a fallacy. It doesn't hold on any level from a basic perspective of logic. And so the real argument to me is like, okay, well, you just want to open your borders and let anyone come through. And then that goes into a law enforcement, it goes into a cultural, and it goes into a national security issue. And you wouldn't do that because how many of these videos have you seen where there's a guy, you know, open borders or whatever, you know, and they're set up videos, but then it's like, oh, okay, well then oh, so you think people, yeah, we should house them and we should let them in our community and then the guy whistles and, you know, from around the corner come like, you know, a bunch of, you know, Hispanic guys, you know, and I'm sure he's paying them. It's an obvious setup and, you know, he's doing it for his videos. And then he's like, okay, come on. And he starts speaking Spanish to him. And then all the guys are saying thank you to the homeowner. And the guy's like looking around like, what the? He's like, well, you just said. So I thought you meant that you would welcome these people in and you would take it. No, not in my house. Get the hell out of here. And that goes to what you just said, Blackbeard, you know, and it just goes in, and it just, to me, it shows I hate to say it this way. I don't want to call people ignorant, but you're clearly not thinking this thing through, right? On so many levels. You're just letting either your emotions or your evil politics rule your thought and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you want to come out and make a solid, cogent argument for why we should let anyone come across our borders, break it down. But I'm going to sit there and from my perspective, I'm going to argue it from a law enforcement, economic, and national security perspective. BCP, let's come over to you.
Yeah. What other nations don't have a border? I mean, non-third world countries. We're the only one. We're the only one that doesn't protect their own border. And you know, they play the sympathy card, and I'm guilty of that in some ways, right? If there are true people that are coming here for asylum, I want to welcome them in. The problem is we have one party right now that has opened our border to the point where we are letting in terrorists, people from every other country. And, you know, honestly, I believe every person that should come through the southern border for asylum should be either Mexican, Central American, or South American, because Venezuela is kind of, they might need it. No one else should come through that southern border unless you are Hispanic. Can I say that? You know, so whatever. Anybody else needs to come through the other way, and you need to do it the right way. The problem is we have all kinds of people coming through that southern border. And so
just to slow you down, anyone coming across the border needs to do it the right way. Anyone coming across the border needs to do it the right way.
But I'm saying there should be no asylum seekers that are not Hispanic. I don't want to say that everything south of the United States is Hispanic, but anybody, I'm saying just anybody from those countries, they're the only ones. And at the same time, Mexico is not that bad. You need to go there for asylum. If you're in that much danger, it ends at Mexico. We don't allow anybody else until Mexico, you know, decides, or you're, you know, I get it. You know, there's a lot of corruption there. So I will say, but you
Well,
should not.
before you, hang on,
have to do that.
just real quickly, before you go too far past Mexico, just ask. I just want every rational human being who watches or listens to this podcast to ask one question. How is it that all these people who are coming up through Central America, you know, whether they're flying into Central America or into South America and then making the journey through Central America, are coming into Mexico, transiting Mexico, and then coming across the American border? They're already coming into Mexico. Are they coming to Mexico illegally? Are they coming into Mexico legally? Are they hitting the southern Mexican point of entry, and saying, hey, I really don't want to stay in your country. I'm just transiting through until I get to America? And then what is Mexico doing? Right. So again, you know, if we were neighbors, any three of us, and your dog, like, so let's just say, you know, Blackbeard's dog was going down to your house, walking through your yard to get over to my house to hang out with my dog or eat my dog food. Would you just let it happen? If along the way coming through, you know, like, you know, if his dog is destructive and it's shitting in your yard and it's attacking your dog or your kids, you know, like, how does this even happen? And I mean this seriously. How is it that the Mexican government, you know, like, are they not feeling any negative consequences of this?
Well,
I'm kind of setting this up. So go ahead.
They're releasing their prisoners. All those countries from Mexico on south, they're letting loose their prisons and sending them up here. They're getting rid of, they are improving their security by sending them up here. That just, you know, it's disgusting. Now, I don't want to defend the dogs and crossing through. So if Blackbeard's dog crossed through my property, I'd be fine with it as long as he doesn't try and attack my dogs or kill my other animals or whatever. Blackbeard's dog is welcome to pass through my property to get to you.
But see, that's just it. So Blackbeard's dog can come through your yard as long as he doesn't shit in it, attack your kids or your wife or you or your animals. So in order to make that, and to ensure that happens, or he doesn't stop in your yard and set up a camp and decide to live there for the next week before he comes over to my house.
Guys,
So in other words, no, let me just
not,
finish real quickly. I'm just trying to point out that there obviously has to be some mechanism that's facilitating these movements for the selfish interests of Mexico, right? Mexico doesn't want all these people hanging out in Mexico. So their selfish interest, they're aiding and abetting and facilitating this. They want the individual to get through. And Blackbeard, if you disagree, well, you're coming to you next. But all I'm just trying to get at, there's obviously some type of concerted, coordinated effort, because otherwise Mexico would be stopping them at their southern border saying, whoa, no, you don't just get to walk through my yard because you want to go shit in Mark's yard. No, that's not how this works. So there's obviously some other type of game afoot. That's all I'm trying to use. Maybe I did a bad job with that analogy, but all right, Blackbeard.
So a couple things. In the last podcast that I was on with you guys, I linked a document. It's from the United Nations, and it explains in that document that it's a UN plan to do this immigration effort into the United States and into Europe. And again, that's part of the destruction of Western civilization. The other thing is, I'm not saying it does, the behavior of this dog in this example isn't important. It is not fundamentally what's in question. The point isn't the behavior of the dog crossing through Better Call Paul's yard to get to yours. The question is, that's Better Call Paul's yard. Does he give permission over his property, period, regardless of the dog's behavior? Maybe this is a saint of a dog. Maybe it's the greatest dog who ever existed. And if Better Call Paul says, this is my yard, and I don't want your dog, no matter what its behavior is like, crossing into my yard, then he's not to cross into my yard because it's my yard. That's the point.
So I think you and I are saying somewhat the same thing, but from slightly different angles. I'm trying to make that same assertion because I'm coming at it from your position. Like, how in the hell would somebody just knowingly let you do that, right? Because this is my yard. Mexico has a yard just like America has a yard, right?
Well, obviously, they've given permission. They've given permission, obviously, right? And so has our government. And so what they're saying is they're speaking on our behalf because here we delegate our sovereignty to the Congress. And so but really this is the executive branch's responsibility to enforce the law, which they're intentionally not doing because this government is, in my opinion, captured and owned by moneyed interests. But it's non-governmental organizations operating at the behest and in conjunction with the United Nations that have decided to give permission to let the dog in the yard. And I'm not equating migrants with dogs. I just want to be clear about that. I don't think that,
Yeah.
again, I don't think that all migrants are bad. I want to be very
No,
clear
no.
about
I
that.
just want to stop. This is something I'm making a point to myself. There's no need to apologize or explain. It's obviously just an analogy. Maybe it's not a great analogy, but we're trying to use the three of us as we're seen on the screen as neighbors. And dude, we could have said a kid. Your kid wants to come over and hang out with my kid, but
Same
animal, because
fundamental
animals
thing.
do this all the time as well. They're running. If you have an animal, or if you live in a community with people with animals, someone's dog is in your back. I'm just giving an example. And I'm not
Animals
making
go-
apologies for language. If somebody wants to say, "Oh my God, you racist," like, no, that is not what we just said at all. So F you and stop being a ridiculous person.
Well, I just want to be clear because some people will take it that way and they shouldn't,
Well,
But-
those
but-
are the ridiculous people that we shouldn't engage with anymore in life. I mean, in conversation. I mean, that's just somebody who's clearly trying to twist it for, because I don't know if they hate themselves or what it is. They're just trying to manipulate the language, from a rather childish kind of perspective to say, well, this is what you said. You and I and everyone else with basic gray matter between their shoulders knows that's not what I just said. Like Trump just had to defend himself the other day because he made that dictator joke, and the media tried to run with it. It's like, dude, we all make jokes. Like I remember when Trump was running for office and his tape, his locker room banter, was that was an issue. And I know somebody, from my previous life, it's a wife of somebody I know. And this is, again, so this is back during that era. And I wasn't on Facebook, but this person was like, I can't believe that language and da-da-da. And I'm just like, and I wanted to do it. I'm like, I've sat and played poker with you while, I've gotten drunk and you've gotten drunk, and you and the other girls had way fouler mouths than Donald Trump did in the locker room. So shut the F up. Don't try to pretend that you're offended by this language. I've heard you say way worse things. So, come on, everybody, just lighten the F up and get real. That's my kind of point on that.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. I think we need to laugh more, honestly. Like everything's gotten way too serious. Like seriously, and that wasn't intentional, but it is. Like we need some levity for the love of God. It's everybody's and it's intentional. I know it is. I mean, it isn't natural. Conflict is inevitable. It's like why we have all these wars. We've always been warlike. Animals will go out and they'll scratch trees and they'll urinate and they're marking their territory. They're saying, this is my space. We occupy three-dimensional reality, and our bodies have to exist in space. And we need resources in our environment to sustain ourselves through life. And so people need space. We need areas. I'm not against common areas. I think it's a wonderful thing. I like the national parks. I like communal gathering places.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All these kinds of things are good. But we also need private space that is our space. It's fundamental to being, and we're more than animals, but even just the animal portion of us, you see it in the natural world, and it's reflected in a more complicated way in human relations, and it extends from the home out into, like you said, into the county, into the state, into the union of states. And then they try to make it into the Union of Worlds, a world federation. But, and I don't think that's a good idea because we need to have, places will vary in terms of the way that they're run, different cultures, different laws. And, I'm not going to thrive in certain places than I might in others and vice versa. And we need variety. And that's the thing is we need, and that's why it's like I'm not against immigration, but we should, if we're going to have a system for it, it should be followed. It should, and the reason that it isn't being followed is because somebody has made the decision to destroy Western civilization. I mean that. They're taking it down right now. Right now, it's happening.
There's no doubt about it. Not a point of levity, but as you were saying that, you know, you were making a cause for the banner a case for the banner I just put up, you know, even on the global level. If we got to that point where you could have, you know, like, you know, a greater sense of harmony and understanding within the world, and we were all more focused, you know, we still all have our different countries, but we're working together towards a common goal, space exploration, you know, creating, you know, working in whatever the goal is, something that betters, you know, like a better energy source, or whatever it is that we're doing, you know, for the betterment of humanity. I think that, you know, Blackbeard, what you were just saying, I think that highlights this quote from Patton. It's like, hey, if we're all thinking the same, so you've got to still have that separation and that difference. And you've got to embrace it and encourage it, because different people look at things differently. So BCP, you missed this in the beginning of the podcast. What I really liked about the fact that Tucker, you know, pulled off that interview is I think the average American, if you saw it, you could see the differences in the body language, the sentence structure, how, you know, Putin reacts to, like, so what we say in English is very different from like what somebody might say in German or French, you know, or Russian or Arabic. You know, it's a different way of how you look at the world and how you look at words and how words come together. So, you know, homonyms don't work for some languages, right? So that type of thing. So that's all I'm trying to say. But so I thought, Blackbeard, what you just said to me was a great, yeah, we should start working together, but we shouldn't forget our differences. Matter of fact, it's those differences that will hopefully allow us as a people, as humans, to come together and find, if we're open and honest about it, to find a better solution to whatever the travail or the tribulation is that we're working our way through. But I want to kind of bring it back down to BCP. We kind of got as we've been accused of, we've got a little bit away from the subject and got a little esoteric, but, you know, whatever, it's Friday night, you know, live stream, you know, have another, you know, I was having some summer sausage and cheese there. So
That's
BCP,
good.
let's bring it back down to the border. I do want to talk a little bit about the national security, because I don't want this to be the second time. Oh, Blackbeard, I just saw your message. You're going to bounce there, buddy? Okay. Well, we're almost at the end. So BCP and I will take it out. Just to let you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about the national security threat. I don't know if you come back in or well, here, I'll just shut up. Final comment before you bounce.
You know, just thanks for having me on. I always appreciate talking with you guys. I learn a lot. I know I get esoteric. I can't help it. It's my nature, but you guys are able to ground things and bring it to the pragmatic level. And I just really appreciate that. So,
well,
I
think
evening.
when we all have
Yeah,
we start
you're
having
great.
these conversations.
You're great.
Yeah.
Don't ever feel that way. You're great.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. No, I think it ain't just you, brother. I mean, like, you know, one of us starts throwing that little worm in the water and everybody's like, I'm going to nibble on that. And I got some comments. So, you know, no, it's all good, my good man. Hey, and I didn't have a chance to ask you off screen. I wanted to give you some props for what, can I do that? You know what? We'll save that for next time. You know what I'm talking about. So, all right, I'll bring that up next time. All right, because we didn't have a chance to talk. Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Be safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks. I didn't tell you, Paul, but I'm sending him an eye patch. He's really making that beard so defined. He's looking so swashbuckler. I'm going to send him one of my eye patches that I had from overseas for my disguise kit. But all right, let's bring it over to you. Let's kind of, you know.
Yeah, I want to say that Learn Me Something said something in the comments, and I agree that the cartels are actually controlling Mexico as far as when it comes to the letting people in through the border. It's not their government. So Learn Me Something is correct.
So to Learn Me Something's point, that's what I was trying to get at with that. You know, again, whether an analogy was bad or good, it doesn't matter. But that's what we're saying. I was just trying to simply throw it out there that, of course, there's got to be some other type of motivation, right? There's got to be some other compelling factor or some other factor that's compelling the Mexican government to allow this to happen, because that's not normal behavior. You don't just cede the integrity of your borders, your freedoms, your laws. You just don't do that. I'm just trying to get people to think, well, why in the hell would Mexico do that? And I'm not trying to pose that I have an answer. Learn Me Something is saying one of the things that might have some influence in it, you know, or some impact on why is Mexico letting all these people just transit their territory, you know?
Because they have no control. They
Yeah.
don't control their own government. And that's why we need to have our National Guard on the border, and whether Texas is doing it by themselves and 20 plus states are helping them out. We need to protect this country, and we need to protect those states. And those states at the border. What sickens me is those states at the border that do not have it's all Republican versus Democrat. Why are the Democrats insisting on letting people in this country illegally go through the port of entry? If you don't go through there, and they'll let you in anyway, you could be anybody, they'll still let you in. But if you're not going through a port of entry, you should be immediately stopped and sent back. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable with that. The port of entry is the way to do it.
Well, just think about this. It's not even just like, being unreasonable. What's the point of having a law? All right. So that begs the other question that Blackbeard was trying to say. Well, what's the point of if you don't have a border? Well, we have laws on the books. The laws are very clear. Like, and it's not, it's a death of 1,000 paper cuts, in my opinion. When you start saying, well, don't say illegal immigrant, but that's what it is. I mean, the English language is very clear. You've entered our
criminal
country
illegal. That's what I would call them, criminal aliens.
Yeah. Okay. Sure,
I don't care what people think about that. They are
but they're not displaced persons. That's war zone shit, right? And if that's the case, come through the POE like everybody else does and claim asylum status. Exactly. This isn't racist.
POE, you are absolutely a criminal. If you go to the POE, you might be a criminal because our government is too weak. And I know my light turned off because it's late and it's auto time. Sorry, I turned purple. But yeah, I want to be sympathetic to those that need to have asylum. But unfortunately, the Democrats are too concerned with votes in the future, because that bill that they had recently was going to allow asylum. It was worse than the Reagan asylum. This was going to be a mess of tens of millions of people in asylum. They want votes. And unfortunately, what the Democrats don't know, and I'm not necessarily, if these are true asylum seekers, they're more conservative than those people think. They're not. Now, the criminals are going to destroy our country. That's why we can't allow it. But those that come in here from there, they're Catholic, typically Catholic from those, southern of the U.S., and they're conservative. And when they hear all this abortion and that kind of stuff, they're not for that. You're not in. That's why they're changing all kinds of other things. But, I don't want to, I know I could go off on a tangent forever on that. I do want to say, though, just to reiterate, it's not about, and we go back to the analogy of the dogs. If your dog comes through my yard and takes a crap, I don't care, right? You're passing through, they don't crap. Why do I not care? Because I live in an area that's rural. I have deer, I have coyotes, I have all kinds of animals crapping in my front yard. I don't care if the dogs come through and crap. But if you live in a neighborhood where you have, in a cul-de-sac or something, and your dogs are pooping in your yard, okay, I get that. So it depends on the situation there. But if you live in a smaller area, where it's a neighborhood, absolutely, the dog's pooping in your yard, that's a problem. So so
just maybe that was a bad analogy, because there is a difference between the rural and the urban areas. But so I love how you just said it, because when you said, I live out in the woods, and that made me laugh, because that would be my perspective too. There's so many wild animals shitting in my yard all the time. You're like, what's dog poop versus, at least it's not bear poop, because that's a lot of poop, right? Type of thing. But then on the other side of it, though, this is my property and I'm hunting on it, X, Y, and Z. And now it isn't that your dogs are running through and shitting in my yard. Your dogs are running through and they're chasing deer, and that's another,
right.
So if we want to continue down that road, the analogies continue, because, it's wild, but I guess, at the end of the day, what we're really just trying to say is like there has to be rules and there has to be norms and we have to follow them. And if we don't follow them, then you just will eventually end up with anarchy. And then I'll just be like, yeah, but again, we just did it in the last podcast. And then, you've got a bunch of guys who beat the shit out of a cop. And I don't even know the circumstances. Did the cop do something illegal? But it doesn't appear that way from the film footage. Beat the shit out of the cop, and the mayor just releases them, and they're walking out, they're flipping off the cameras, and they fled immediately. Okay, is that indicative or representative of everybody who's trying to come across the border? Not at all. But those people that we're putting into the category of good human beings that we want to be part of our society, then why aren't they just coming through the normal way? Why? We have a set of procedures, we have a set of laws. Why aren't we just upholding those laws? And then we do it the right way for everybody who's involved. Period.
That's the
and
problem.
Then the people who are coming across illegally are like the people who are coming across illegally, and because it's illegal. And then your first point of assumption, or should be, as you're looking at the question, is like, this person here is already committing a crime, trying to enter my country illegally. It's fair to assume that this person is trying to hide something or has nefarious intentions. Are they a terrorist? Are they a drug dealer? Are they a criminal element? What is it that's going on here? Why don't you just come through the POE and do it like, do we have a process? We would welcome you in. The process might suck because it's run by bureaucrats, but it will eventually, I can't go through that because I'm coming from a war-torn country, and if I go back, I'll be killed. Go back to the POE and make that claim. We have a process for that. Otherwise, you're breaking the law. So the first thing that you do when you come to a new country is to take a shit in my yard and piss on my laws and just say, I want to be in your country, but I don't want to follow your laws. That is a fundamental issue that no matter where you come down, in my opinion, no matter where you come down on the immigration issue, you have to look at that, because otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do it again tonight because we're already over 2 hours. But the national security threats that are contaminant that go along with, I'm having a hard time saying that word right now, that go along with the national security issues that coincide with that, are part and parcel to the fact that we have so many people coming across our border illegally. They're dumping IDs. We don't know who they really are. Again, do your own research on this. You could say that's not true. I could show you a gazillion videos where it's obviously true. Military age male Chinese. Okay, what's that all about? And that military age male is a real thing. All right. So, if you're part of the Forever War and you operated in any of those overseas theaters, you know exactly why we say military age male. It's not a code word. It's like, hey, this is somebody of fighting age. And this isn't like somebody who's, in a wheelchair. You're talking about potential insurgents, potential fighters. If you're China and you're worried about what America has to say, regarding, the Taiwanese elections or China's, provocations towards Taiwan and reunification, forceful reunification, how many people know that Taiwan is actually technically the actual China? I mean, you can go all the way back down into the 50s, right? World War II in the 50s. It used to be Formosa, right? That's where where the official government fled as the Chinese communists overthrew China. So, okay, well, so hold, who's really, that goes into the one China policy and Nixon and all this kind of crap. But if you're China and you're playing the long game, and if you view America as a potential threat for your expansionist, ideas, or inclinations, well, you're not going to want us to be able to respond to that. Well, and so now I'm coming at it from a very, I don't know, maybe selfish perspective, but this is what I was trained to do. This is what my job was, is counterinsurgency, insurgency, by, with, and through working with rebels, SF will talk about G's, their guerrilla force, it's the same type of mission. So I see this stuff and all, I'm just thinking of like, man, I would be having a heyday if I was a unconventional warfare type of dude. I would definitely have some bases somewhere down in South America where I would be interviewing, facilitating, creating rat lines, recruiting people along the rat lines to help facilitate, to provide me intel when maybe the government's going to like stop, or intervene, or if Americans were getting involved. This is exactly the type of operations that happen in that clandestine war. And I just can't, And no one's even wants to talk about the clandestine labs that were out west in California, you know, with potential biological weapons. I mean, we are really so dangerously close to having our PP spanked. I mean, like, and I just wonder if when the moment happens, whether there's like, well, let's see, the moment has already happened. Look at the crime sprees taking place by gangs of illegal immigrants being allowed to ride around and, you know, or in vehicles. They don't have a driver's license. Oh, let's give them a driver's license then. Okay. So now here's somebody who's got a driver's license or doesn't, and he gets into an accident, damages your vehicle or kills you, you know, or kills one of your family members, your kid. How are you ever going to collect any insurance? That person doesn't have any insurance. Like, so just even on that micro level of social issue, all the way up to the gangs on the law enforcement issue, to now gangs are so brazen, they're just beating up police officers and then just being released. So there's no punishment and they know it. And then on top of that, there's nation states, nation actors who would want to cause this harm. And I would just be looking at that. And I personally would think it's a trap. I'm like, this can't be real. This is like got to be a setup, right? They're setting me up. There's got to be a way they're going to like foil my operations and learn all of my, you know, my assets and, you know, and my rat lines and all, you know, my bases of operation, my forward base, you know, there's got to be. That's what I would be thinking, because this is so obviously and so easily, the potential for this is so easy along our border right now. It makes the operations in Western Iraq, Eastern Iraq, Southeastern Iraq, or in Afghanistan, it makes those operations we were trying to interdict and prevent in those areas from an insurgent perspective. It just makes it laughable. I mean, it just does. It makes it absolutely laughable. And I just want to kind of end people with that. This is kind of my final little comment. Again, I just kind of rushed through that. I really wanted to talk more about it, but boys and girls, we're in big trouble. That you could sit there and plead and argue the humanitarian perspective all you want. And I would just simply say, but there are huge social, you know, law enforcement, and more importantly, well, as importantly, national security issues at play here. And I just wonder how many people on, you know, both Republican and Democrat, and how many people throughout our society are going to raise their hands and say, I fucked up, when we get punched in the face. And we're already getting punched in the face. Look at San Francisco. Look at all the cities that are closing down things because of these roving gangs, right? We're creating environment. We are creating a Mad Max environment with our own country. Let's just hope it stays at Mad Max, because that's something we can contain with good law enforcement, right? With a, you know, like, again, if we focus. But our ability to sustain against, you know, unconventional warfare, when we're not even paying attention to it, or we don't want to talk about it, you know, for fear of being called racist or whatever, or because we just wanted to let people come across the border so we could secure the next, you know, 2 or 3 elections. That's not just irresponsible. It's inexcusable, and it's horrible. It's evil. And I just wonder if any of these people are going to raise their hands and say, yeah, we really fucked up and I'm sorry. And, you know, I wonder if that's going to be the point on this. All right, Paul, bring it over to you. I got a couple comments to bring up while you're talking.
Yeah, so I do want to say that the local government failures are what are killing New York, right? The fact that they have these Soros funded attorneys that are letting them go. Look, I have no problem with them getting a fair trial, because that's what we believe in, right? But detain them. They're letting them go. So that's my issue with that. And it is all about those Soros attorneys. And we can get into that in the future. We do have some comments, though, that I do agree that we want to look at Angry Viking Chinese refugees. Yeah. Well, you know, there might be some Chinese that side with us. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive.
Well, look, if you were a very clever, you know, individual, and
I know I know they're doing that, and they're pretending, and we have Chinese military cells in this country right now. So I want to put that on the table, and so just say that I am sympathetic to the. There might be some people that actually want to get out of there. But
Well, that's exactly correct, right? And maybe some of those people would use that as an opportunity to,
right.
like, I'm going to go do this for you, and then they get into the country, and and we won't know this, right? Because this would be immediately classified. But then once coming across the border, at the first opportunity, when it wouldn't dime them out and potentially get their family back home killed, or they would have their own vulnerabilities that they would take into consideration. But maybe some of them, at the first point would be like, hey, I'm actually really working for, these guys or these guys or these guys. I've been sent here to do this, this, and that. Yeah, that's always a possibility. I mean, we get defectors, to the state, right?
They
But
still need to do it legally in the end, right?
well, but that's why we need to have that legal process, because how else can we properly control and vet? Look, without getting into sources and methods, imagine a port of entry, where people are coming through. Imagine like going to a baseball game when you're coming through the ticket gates. There's so many ways you take advantage. You can create those type of environments. Our southern border is one of them. And you're using that to your advantage in order to protect your citizens in your country or your teammates, or to further your operations, because now you're able to collect data, personal data, biometric data. You might be able to have a brief interview where you're asking some questions and figuring out where somebody comes from. Or now that this guy, Jimmy, comes from this area, and you're concerned about this area because that's where a lot of cocoa, you might want to start doing an operation to start talking to that guy. Maybe you can turn him and he starts giving you information about what's going on. Even the information that tells you about the community. Like, that's incredibly important from an intelligence perspective, especially if you're going to do some type of war fighting, kill capture type of operation. You have to know, like, well, does the streets even are there street lights? Not every country in the world has streetlights, like, are there dogs in the community? Like, these are things that ground forces assaulters want to know, right? How thick is the building? Where are the egress? I don't want to get into that too much, but you see what I'm saying? Like, so there's opportunities that we're missing from a national security and just a security law enforcement perspective. There are so many opportunities we are letting slip through our fingers right now because we're just letting people dump across the border willy-nilly. There's no way we're processing these people properly. There's no way that we're having an opportunity to potentially spot and identify individuals who could be of value to us, and I mean that seriously, selfishly, value to us as Americans, right? To help us prevent the next 9/11, to help us better understand how the drug cartels are moving through this region of the border, whatever that issue is. We are missing that opportunity by just letting people rush through the border like this. And more importantly than missing our intelligence opportunities is we are setting ourselves up for incredible failure. No one is even talking about those bio labs out in California. No one's talking. You notice how it gets a snippet, gets a little tension, and it just gets buried down. And it's only these type of conversations and alt media that even tries to keep these stories in the forefront, or at least in our memory bank, so we don't just forget them. Because the next thing you know, it's the Super Bowl, or it's not even the Super Bowl. Honestly, it's what's her face, why can't I? Yeah, it's that kind of bullshit. And we suddenly forgot that just yesterday we found a bio lab in an abandoned warehouse in California that had all kinds of biological agents, many of them potentially weaponizable, right? And it's not just that easy to weaponize something. See Shinrikyo in Tokyo, the sarin gas attacks. This was an organization, a cult that had millions of dollars in scientists. But God dang it, somebody was doing it. Somebody was doing it right under our noses. It was a total, we got lucky that we even found it. And that's the sad thing with terrorism. We have to be right every time. They only have to be right once. Another way of saying it, we've got to get lucky every time. Every time we've got to get lucky. A terrorist only has to get lucky once. And then the damage is already done. People are dead. Infrastructure is crippled, which leads to people dying. We are inviting such a disaster with our policies at our border right now. And I just, again, my own, on a humanistic personal level, I hope that people who are causing this, part of me wants to say, I hope they burn in hell. And then the Christian in me says, okay, just take it down a notch. That's not the right thing to say. But these people are knowingly, wittingly or unwittingly, so malfeasance or misfeasance, it's still bad. They are taking us down in a direction, down a hole that's going to result in people dying. These actions are going to result in Americans dying. It's already resulting in people dying. Do you know how many people are dying in Mexico or along that trade route, or how many women are being raped or children are being trafficked? They're already they're creating these pipelines, these rat lines, that it isn't just about getting it's all these criminal elements are taking advantage of these established rat lines as well. It's just we are allowing evil to take place on such a level that I just can't understand. I just have a hard time looking in the mirror and saying, what the, and trying to answer, what the fuck are we doing? And I just ran long there, Paul. I'm going to bring it over to you because I need to, what do they say? I need to cool my jets a little, brother.
I'm going to close it out just to give so some of the things that you had talked about. Let's look at wide receivers versus defensive backs, or offensive linemen versus defensive linemen. The offensive linemen have to be 100% correct. If they give up a sack, and they failed, but they may stop them every other play of the game, right? And a defensive back, when a wide receiver catches, pass, touchdown, whatever, they stop them, the rest of it. So we're playing in that situation where, we need to be careful. Sometimes we fail. And I think that's what you were getting at. And, we can't be right 100% of the time. And it doesn't mean that we're a failure because we lost once here or there.
Yeah, but hang on. No, this is where I disagree. No, we have to be right at 100% of the time, because when we lose, it isn't a first down. It isn't 7-yard pass. It isn't. It's people dying. It is. Death.
I agree.
People die, and so that is the internal struggle. The deck is stacked against the defense. We're the defense here, right?
It depends on the level.
Yeah.
I agree.
We have to stop every fucking play, and that is so difficult to do. And so, thank you for saying it. Maybe I didn't do.
That was my point. It's tough to stop every play. When it comes
hang on. Give me 1 second. Give me a second.
Different.
Here's what maybe I didn't explain it well enough. It's not just that we have to stop every play. It's that we have to stop every play. As impossible as that seems, we really have to stop every play. Because once we can't, the first play we can't stop, people die. And that is already in an almost impossible job. Technically, if you want to, it is an impossible job. You can't stop every play. But damn it, if you care about this country, you give everything, so that even when you give up a play, it's not a home run. It's not a touchdown. Maybe it's 7 yards, and that's up. And I hate using a sports analogy to talk about the life and death of human beings. Right. But that's just, I hate to say it. It's the reality. You can't stop every play. But if we're allowing this to happen on our southern border, it's like this. It's like, instead of playing with, I'm going to show my ass here. What is it? 9 or 11 guys on defense, on either side in the NFL. I can't remember what it is. Let's just say it's 11. If you're a big football junkie, don't jump down my throat. I haven't cared about football forever. But if it's 10, let's just say it's 10 guys. If you got 10 guys, that's what the rules are. You get 10 guys on your side. And you start flooding the border. You let the other team suddenly have 20 players on the field. You're not defending against 10 guys. Now it's 2-1, in favor of them, or they get 30 guys. There's no way you're going to prevent a first down or a field goal or a touchdown. And that's the bad analogy for we're not going to be able to prevent a horrible accident or tragedy. Not even an accident. I'm sorry. A horrible terrorist event from taking place. That's all I'm trying to say, Paul.
Yeah, no, I get it. And so let's scrap that, because I think that's a bad way. We both understand what we meant. But I would say, let's look at 9/11. How many people did it take to commit that attack? Was it 9?
So technically 11, but you could also argue that there was a nation state involved. The truth
Who
of that
actually did it from the United States? Who was here that did it?
So
forget their training. Forget all the training. Who were the actors that did that? 9 people. And We have way more than 9 people coming in this country that are capable of doing that we have no idea where they are. We have cells that are bigger than 9 people in this country right now. And if you heard that, I know Jack had a video on it, and I'm honestly concerned that it was YouTube recommended that I watched it, and they did it for Jack. I don't know if it's some kind of a scam there, what's going on here, but this Ohio sheriff was telling us about it,
Yeah.
he's going to start training people and stuff. We are going to get attacked. And if it took only 9 people to do 9/11, what will happen if they have cells in all these states? We are in real danger here, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to be paranoid. I'm just saying, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. That's the problem. That goes back into we have to be lucky every time. And I did see that sheriff talking, and and he's right. It's not a matter of when, or it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's the other dilemma and the problem with trying to counter terrorism. It's not, well, if this is possible. No, it is possible. What you really are trying to do is trying to figure out when it's going to happen, because then you get into aspects of crisis management, consequence mitigation. It's going to happen. So it's like what we just said, instead of scoring a touchdown, you're going to try to mitigate it where they only get 7 yards instead, and then you're going to figure out how you're going to manage that crisis that they just got 9/11, or again the litany of terrorist activity. And if anybody who's still watching this or watch this in the future, and if you want, I'll share some of my stuff that I teach a class on terrorism to law enforcement once or twice a year. I'll share some of that data with you and some of the stuff, but terrorism hasn't gone away. It's just been kind of pushed under it's been pushed under your sight line right now. That's all it is. As Americans, we haven't been talking about, because we've been talking about other things. And we went through a period in which, we had an administration, and the goal of that administration, and their directives flowed down through the chain of command into the other organizations and entities. And either, the bad guys were scared, or we had our shit wired really tight and we were drilling down on that stuff. I mean, that was the period when we killed the head of the Quds Force, the IRGC Quds Force, Soleimani. And so going back to the Iranian conversation, which goes back into the Iranian conversation, they just recently held a ceremony for Soleimani's death. And then that was bombed. They had, just call them car bombs, but, IEDs, and it killed a lot of people. Well, the Iranian government and the Iranian people think that we did it. I don't know. I'm not in that entity, that organization anymore. I have no idea if we did it or not. And there's not enough information coming out through mainstream media for me to even formulate an opinion. Look, there's people within Iran who don't like, don't like the current regime, right? It's a theocracy. So, I would like to think that, again, by, with, and through that, we're working with people and fomenting something and trying to get the good people of Iran to return to, a state where the country isn't stoning women to get to death because they had an extramarital affair. I don't care what you think about extramarital affairs, but that's not a death sentence. That, that's a divorce. I guess they start with D, but they have different results, but one person doesn't die just because somebody had yeah. Anyway, I'm taking us down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but
yeah, I get it, and we should probably wrap it up. But the angry Viking is here, and I agree. Americans are not ready for the type of.
Oh no, you're.
Go ahead. You take it from here, Mark.
Oh well, it ain't just me. I mean, it's anybody who's seen real anything. I mean, look, even if you've seen a real bad car accident, you suddenly have a slightly different perspective on wow, man, I really should be paying attention when I'm driving this thing. These things are death machines. I mean, they really are. Tons of people. So even if it's that, all the way up to you're a Delta Force guy and you've been on, missions for 20 effing years, and everywhere in between, dude, dead is dead. Combat is combat. And, I wish Redbeard was here to respond to you, angry Viking veteran, AVV, because, one of the things he likes to talk about is some of the reports he's seen from foreign fighters going and fighting in Ukraine for the Ukrainians, coming back and saying, well, this is not like GWAT. This isn't like the global war on terror. There's dudes with tanks shooting at me. You're like, yeah, no one ever shot at me with tanks in any place I was at. You know, the same thing. You know, yeah, you had IEDs and mortars and rockets and small arms fire and shit like that, but you weren't fighting mechanized units. You weren't fighting against somebody who had close air support. It's a completely different style of warfare. You're absolutely right. Dude, I mean, that's just the violence of of modern combat. That's not even going into the evil, as you said, the absolute evil of some of our adversaries. I mean, again, just look, who gets in a dump truck and drives down a promenade and runs over 200 and some people? Evil does that. Who captures a combatant and then cuts off their head after they've surrendered? Evil does that. Who crosses the border and then finds a bunch of women and children in a house and then rapes them, mutilates their genitals, or takes a shovel and decapitates somebody? Who does that? I don't care what your gripe is with the other side. Soldiers don't do that. Evil does that. You're absolutely right, sir. And if that has ever visited upon our country, you know, I hate to say this. God, I really hate to say this. I don't know how we're going to respond to it. It might wake a bunch of people up. It might be that proverbial ripping the Band-Aid off, like, holy shit, that's evil. I got to do something about it. I just hope it's not too late. You know, I hope we still have time to respond to that, and we can contain it to a 7-yard drive, as opposed to like, oh my God, I don't believe we just gave up that touchdown. And, you know, and now thousands of people are dead. I hope you're right, sir. I agree with you. Most Americans have no fucking concept. No concept. Paul.
No, I think I've said all I can say, and
all right, I'm gonna end it here. Then.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let you comment. I'm gonna share a couple things at the end I didn't get to, so just bear with me here. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, so this is behind a paywall is again, but this is Seymour Hersh. I can try to put some of these tabs up if people want to. This is an article by Seymour Hersh. It's over on, God, where is this? It's a Substack. I can't remember where it is, but I highlighted something here. But what I thought, which right here. Right there. I mean, like,
small, but
what's that?
I can see it. I can see it, but the text is small.
Oh, hang on. Then we come back over here. Let me just do something real quickly. I got it real quickly. There. Can you read that a little bit better? I'll just leave that up for a quick second. I'm just trying to give some people some additional comments to think about. We just talked for 2.5 hours, and like, there's just so much going on. There's no way to actually really do it justice. And, but I hope anyone who's watching and listening, whether now or in the future, takes this to heart and go do your own research, right? And look this stuff up yourself. And I'm going to bring up another one here. Oh, what just happened? There we go. Now Patrick sent me this. He was on our last podcast. He couldn't make. Well, before I get to Patrick, let me just bring up another one. So we didn't even talk about this. Right. You know, like, again, you notice how this is being rabbit holed. This is being totally, that's not even the right word, rabbit holed. This is being shoved in a closet, and the doors being, you know, like, you know, they're putting boards over the door so no one even knows there was a closet there. But like, this is a peer-reviewed study, you know, more and more of, I guess I should probably come over here again. Let me just come. Oh, no, it is. Okay. It is full screen. I'm just going to just let everybody see it. Now, this is over on, this one right here is on Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge is a financial online thing, but they do a lot of international stuff. So as a result of that, they just bring in international issues, but it's a lot of domestic and international financial news. But look, this is a study from just a few weeks ago. I mean, like, you just got to read it for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you. I'm not going to pretend I'm your doctor, any of that kind of bullshit. You just got to read it. This is just more and more of the kind of crap that we're not being shown. We're not being presented with as a country. And so all of these other things, you know, it's circus and games. It's circus and games to keep us from looking and paying attention to what I believe that we should really be talking about as a country and as a people, you know, not just an American, but as humans, earthlings, however you want to say it. Actually, I just said Earthlings. Okay.
He's
I already did
even
the Nord.
watching too many movies.
Yeah. All right. I did the Nord Stream one.
Yeah.
Seriously, that came up in the Putin interview. And it didn't. This would be my one critique from the interview from Mr. Carlson. Dude, you should have talked about Nord Stream more. I mean, like, Putin came out and said, I'm not going to talk about sources and methods, but we know you guys did it. And that's in essence what he said. You know, he's a former spy. He's not going to divulge how he knows. But, you know, there's so many reports about Nord Stream out there. Like, how are we the innocent party in this fist fight if we're out there like breaking people's shit when there was no reason to break it? And then I'm just going to share this last one. Let me come over to full screen so I can see how it's displaying. Okay. So this was sent to me by Patrick, and I would, you know, just look this up, right? So going back into what's happening domestically, what's going on along the border. And then if you're not paying attention, what's going on inside of our own courts, you know, within our own country. But this is that bill that prohibits unauthorized private paramilitary activity. You read this bill, and I'm here to tell you, this has got to be shut down. You got to be reaching out to your representatives, your senators, because it's not a long bill. That's it in its totality right there. It's not a long bill, but it's pretty clear. If you and any of your buddies get together, oops, sorry, I did something stupid on my end. If you and any of your buddies get together and you start doing some training, you guys got some weapons, you know, those weapons have more than 10 round magazines. Dude, you're a paramilitary organization, and it's unbelievable. It's basically stripping away from you, the American person, the American citizen, my fellow brothers and sisters. It's stripping away from you your ability to defend yourself and your community. That's what that bill does.
It targets.
Go ahead, Paul.
It targets Jack's Discord.
Oh, damn right. Yeah, even Discord.
Right.
I'm going to bring you full screen. Go ahead and say that.
It targets Jack Black Scout's Discord because he encourages people to get together and train together. So if you have more than 3 people or up to 3 people, you can't do it. So are they targeting him because they know him and we know he's targeted? All right. So I think that this is very scary.
Yeah.
So now I can no longer use Jack's Discord to meet up with unless it's one person, 2 people.
Well, hey, but you know the deal. Slippery slope. Give me an inch and I'll take a mile. Today it's 3 people. Tomorrow it's 2. And a year, you know, and then a year, and then it's you can't do it. Yeah,
I mean,
you can't own.
I have more than 3 neighbors that I would go, you know, to arrange.
I know it sounds like we're being like, you know, we're overreacting, but nowhere in the bill does it define like physically. What if we were just doing this right here? There's 5 people watching this right now, and then me and you, that's 7 people. 7 people. Well, right now, if this falls into the outline of that bill, we're all guilty of paramilitary operations right now because we're trying to work with each other, we're sharing ideas, we're trying to make each other better. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a weapon. I'm just beseeching anyone who watches or listens to this, go and do your research. Look at that bill. It's up there. Here, I'll just actually pull it up one time. So I'll just say
assembly. It's assembly.
So it's It's S.3589, Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024. You can find it at congress.gov. Congress.gov, S as in Sierra, S.3589, Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity.
But it has not passed.
What's that?
It has not passed.
No, but they're trying to, right? And this, again,
it won't pass that. It will not pass.
Well, but you say that. Look at some. Hey, you know what? Hang on. Here's where I disagree. I would have thought there was no way Obamacare would ever pass, and that fucking passed.
Well, that was all Democrats.
Well, it don't matter if it was all Democrats or Democrats and half Republicans. The fact is it passed. So don't ever say never. That's all I'm trying to say to you, sir. Don't ever say never. Look, Look at the goddamn Republicans who came up with that, that border bill. The guy, the clown who came up with it, and he's still trying to defend it to this day.
Yeah.
Don't ever say never.
Dan Crenshaw, I feel
Oh.
bad for the guy, but he is such a jerk. And I don't want to, I think we should probably
Yeah.
just
We
wrap
should
it
start
up.
wrapping up.
I
All
don't
right.
want to go off on a tangent here. That's another story. You and I, we could talk until about 3 a.m. this podcast will last forever.
It's a good thing I don't have any cigars. Otherwise, I think
do
that's where tonight would have went. So I got no cigars. So that's not
Yeah,
going to be.
we need to cut it off now.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap it up. It's 20:30. It's almost 20:40 Central Time. Angry Viking. Don't even get me going, sir. I just have to. I'm so disappointed in my state. I love calling myself a Minnesotan, but I don't like our urban areas who are passing the bills that no one in the country even agrees on or whatever vote for. Minnesota, to our shame, I should be wearing a black armband every time I talk about Minnesota. Minnesota is no longer even keeping records of how many children during abortions, like the abortion gets botched and the child is born alive and they kill the child. Minnesota just said, yeah, we're not even going to keep track of those stats anymore. We're so evil. We're just not even going to let you know how many times we've aborted viable babies, viable human beings. We're not even going to talk. We're not even going to follow up on that anymore. And red flag laws. And
yeah, I'm from Maryland.
They just spent a shit ton of money. So people who call themselves social justice warriors can take the year off from work. I'm a struggling small business owner. How about giving me a little help? Like you just gave somebody enough money to take a full year off. So what? So they can relax and figure out how to create the next, set of riots or something. Minnesota is just, I'm so embarrassed on so many levels about our state, but to Redbeard's point, I've got my 2 senators and my representative in my phone now. And I started doing it last week and I'm calling them up and I'm going to continue doing it. Hey, what are you doing about Ilhan Omar? What are you doing about the border? What are you doing about the bill we just talked? Anything that pertains to me, the state of Minnesota. What are you doing about our governor? I'm just going to start calling them up. I know the senators, they've never called me back. At least I got a human being talking to my rep, Stauber, but the senators left messages. I've never heard back from any of their offices. And that tells you everything you need to know right there. They don't give a shit about me. I'm just a nobody to them, right? I'm the other. Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm going to leave everybody. All right, Paul, I'm going to leave. I'm going to do one more share screen, and then I'm going to give you a chance to end. I already did this inadvertently earlier, but I'm going to do it one more time because I think this sums it up. Everybody needs to start figuring out how to become this man right here. I don't know what it is about that. Damn, you need to start rising up and embracing it and just becoming Spartacus. Start working against the evil, working against your oppressors. I ain't advocating violence or anything, but if somebody wants to, come in and kick in you got to be able to defend yourself, regardless what that bill says. You got to start BCP, as you just mentioned, Jack, Black Scout Survival, other like-minded people. The moment we allow that to become illegal, and how could that ever be illegal? Even if it gets passed as a law, I wish Redbeard was here. He would shit all over this. He'd be like, dude, just because somebody passes, if it's contrary to the Constitution, it's not a law. And you are not under any obligation to adhere to it. As a matter of fact, if you adhere to it, you are giving up your freedoms. You are basically saying that you were saying, hey, you can go ahead and pass illegal laws that are contrary to the Constitution, and I'll just go ahead with them until it finally gets to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court strikes it down. In essence, you are giving legitimacy to an illegitimate act. So I don't know. On so many levels, I like that Spartacus thing because we all need to be the resistance. We all need to start stepping up, calling our talk at the local level, the city level, the state level, the federal level. Look, we're as we like to say, we've got faces for radio and voices for silent film. This probably will never be it. This is not going to be a huge podcast, but damn it, at least we're out there trying. And you got to start doing it. Each and every one of us has to stand up and just say, nah, no mas, y nunca mas. Es lo mismo, es los dos. No más y nunca más. Nunca más. We've got to start rising up and start saying that stuff. Never again. We're not going to take it. We're not going to allow this to happen ever again. It's up to us. It's not up to DC. Those ass clowns up there are never going to look out for any of these. Any of us watching this video, listening to it, the person in your grocery store, at the gas station, your firefight, man, DC don't care about any of us. I spent a lot of time out there. We'll save that for another time. See, now I'm going on a rant. All right, Paul, you should have been reining me in. Mark, shut up.
I want to let you talk. Learn me something, said something about living in New York, and I lived in Maryland. I just
saw that.
Yeah, so New York, California, and Maryland. Those are the three worst states to live in for freedom, and so I can sympathize with that. I left Maryland, went to Pennsylvania, and then I left there and went to a more free state. So 100% there. So Angry Viking Veteran. I didn't get a chance to read it. So
no, I just put it up. You should be able to see it now.
Okay. So
yeah, and that's another great point.
Oh
and
yeah. So come on, man. I look.
No, but he's got a great point. The bill opens up the door for the slippery slope.
It does.
That's a great friggin' point.
And that's federally, right? So we have to block that in some way. So, even in my free state that I live in, you need a license to do that. But they do have a caveat that says if it's a nuisance to your animals that you're raising or whatever. So I have chickens, whatever. If there's an animal that is a nuisance to that, I don't need a license to kill it.
Correct. That's usually the case in most states, when it's a threat to farmland. Yeah. Or your homestead.
Exactly. So know your laws. So don't mess up, or at least know your neighbors, who's going to report you, and that kind of stuff. But I'm not advocating killing animals. I'm advocating protecting your livelihood.
Well, and look here. I'll give you a really, really minor, and it's a stupid example, but groundhogs and red squirrels. They are burrowing animals. And if you just spent $150,000, $200,000 building a house, and now they're digging at your foundation, which could result in dude, I don't want to just kill a groundhog or a red squirrel just because I want to, but damn it, you try trapping them, you try doing this. And at some point in time, it gets to exactly what you said. You're like, all right, I'm just going to have to kill that animal because I can't afford, $10,000 in, damage to my basement, because again, but I don't think God has any problem with that. It's like, I don't want you to just go, you're not killing the animal just to kill it like a psychopath. You know what I mean? You're exactly. Like, okay, I've tried, like skunks, man, if you live in the country, you can't, see, I know you, yep. The way you just responded, you can't have skunks living around you, man. They will destroy your yard. They're like a menace.
And then, they get in your traps. What do you do with them?
You're gonna wait. Gonna go, hey, go pick up that trap with a skunk in it. Yeah, there's my live trap and there's a skunk in it. Yeah, I'll just go walk over there and pick it up.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. All right, here we go. I got one last thing. I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm not Jeremy. I'm going to try to do this a little bit differently. Let me come back over to us just to see what mode we're in. Okay, there we go. I'm going to just try to play a little Neon Dead. This is Thrum. This is a customer over on the Centerline Systems side. He's part of this band. Guy sent me this, said we can use this, and I just think it's awesome. We weren't able to use it in the last couple months, so I'm going to try to do a little bit of a bullshit Jeremy outro, but I'm going to do it to a little bit of, you can't really. Hey, we really appreciate each and every one of you coming over here tonight. You are the resistance. We're trying to cram a lot of stuff, that proverbial, 10 pounds in the 5-pound bag. But thanks for spending time with us on a Friday night, coming over, listening to what we have to say. We're just a bunch of people. It doesn't matter our backgrounds, our weight, our height, our melatonin content, any of that shit. None of that shit matters. We're human beings just like the rest of you. Thank you very much for coming here tonight. And you are the resistance. We've got to get out there. We have to start being vocal. We've got to vote, and we've got to let those people in power, those elected officials, know that we're not standing up for that kind of crap. And if they, they want to mutilate little children or permit pedophilia or human trafficking or, drugs or criminal activities running rampant in your town, man, we got to start voting these people out of office. We got to let them know that that's just no mas, man. No mas y nunca mas. Never again. That's it. That's all I got. Paul, you got any final comments, sir?
No, I'm good.
All
I
right.
agree 100%.
All right. Well, then, to everybody watching and listening, thank you very much. God bless. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Get out there and do some fun out in the wilderness, and just kind of cleanse that soul and refresh, and then wake up the next day and get back in the ring and start throwing punches. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for watching Mission Critical Podcast. We'll see you. We've got next Tuesday is our next normal podcast. And I don't know if we'll do another live stream next Friday, but with the way everything's going in the world, we might start doing the live streams every other week or once a week. I don't know. And I'm a loser. So this is my idea of a good Friday night. BCP, what about you?
I'm a loser too. So let's have at it.
Maybe we should do that. Who's that? I'm a loser, baby. So why don't you subscribe?
Yeah.
All right. On that horrible note, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. All right, everybody, be good. Woo!